Welcome to the Jaybe Font channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. I'm sorry. Ooh, did I say Jaybe Font? Sorry. Welcome to the JB channel on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. It is March 23rd, 2025. We are live. Yes, I know it's been a couple weeks since my last show, but last week I was actually with Real Revolutionary Education Action League. They were doing a solidarity hub, so we were doing some work out there and to help the members of the community. We were giving away toiletries and food and clothes. They were doing haircuts. They were doing hair washes. There were also free water ice that was being made. It was an amazing time. And then one of the members of the community came with his guitar and started playing his guitar and singing, and brother could play, and he had us jumping. And so it was a beautiful time. And so I am very grateful to be able to get together, not just with the Orlando chapter, but also be able to collaborate with other mutual aid groups within the Orlando area so that we can be able to actually build class consciousness, teach, as well as help provide for our neighbors as well. So I just wanted to thank them for that as well. The members of Real will actually be on the RBN Roundtable this Thursday. You're not going to want to miss it because it's going to be a great conversation between activists who are on the ground, who are doing the things that we always say that we should do, that are doing the things that people like myself, Savvy, Nick, and Rome do on a regular basis. And so I can't wait to have them on to show just a concrete example of on-the-ground organizing and what they have been doing here in the Orlando area. You trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. So be sure to be here this Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? All right. Now, with that being said, just want to get into the regulars, like go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody who has so far. If you want to wait till the end, that's fine too. But I promise you, you're going to like what I have to talk about. All right. So then also, if you guys would like to subscribe to our Substack, this gives you email notifications wherever we go live, upload clips. So you guys have that to join the mailing list. Also, if you guys would like to get in touch with us, you guys can get in touch with us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. So that you guys can submit any stories or any words of encouragement, things like that. It always helps us indefinitely. So thank you so very much as well for that. Now, while we're at it, we're going to say hello to a few people in the chats, and then we'll get into our subjects for today. I have two subjects, and I just got through with a conversation. I'm already fired up. All right. So let's check on the Rumble side just to see if there's any Rumble rants early. So it looks like we're good there. All right. And then let's check on the Rockfin. We're good there as well. All right. Smooth sailing. So let's get into the rest of the chat here in the YouTube side. And let's chat. All right. We have Dabby Dabs coming in saying at fam, smiles, and what is that? Live long and prosper? Yeah, live long and prosper. All right. Trekkies unite. All right. We have Serena coming in saying, greetings, comrades. Trump and Elon are really bulls in a china shop. They're closing my local Social Security office in a town full of elderly people. You know, I actually talked about, Elon and Social Security last week. There's now underpinnings or, people kind of whispering that that Social Security may end up delaying payments. And I'm going to tell you this, those of us who receive Social Security retirement or Social Security disability or SSI, supplemental security income, even if those payments are delayed, we are screwed. Because how many people depend on those payments to pay their rent? And if that comes late, and guess what? Some places after 5 up to 3 days, you're considered late. After some places, after 5 days, you're considered late. And this is when the eviction process starts. So then a lot of landlords, what they do, depending on the state, but what a lot of landlords will do is they will start the eviction process by, of course, they'll send you a late notice, right? But then if they don't receive money, and a lot of times, a lot of the ones, especially the ones that are company owned, they're not like a private landlord. When they start the eviction process, they won't accept partial payments. So let's say it's like my rent is $1,000 and I only have like 600 of it. And it's like, can I give you 600 and then pay you 400 later? No, it has to be the whole $1,000 all at once. And so that's how they operate. And then what they'll do is they will, start with the, court proceedings and attorneys. And so then they'll start the legal process of evicting you. Then you'll get typically a yellow paper that's taped to your door that is like either pay up or evict the property. And then on top of that, they will tag on lawyers' fees as well as filing fees and things like that on top of your rent as well. So this is the future that I see for a lot of disabled and elderly people within this country, is that a lot of disabled and elderly people will literally end up being out on the street just because of delayed payments. I'm not even talking about stop payments. I'm talking about delay. Is Doge really efficient? Silly gooses they are. Silly gooses. All right. Thank you very much for that, Serena. We have Miriam says, seems like the seeds of Satan is ruling all over the world like anything goes. The thing is like, it's, whatever you believe in. I mean, I would say this. If you have a system where it encourages greed, you have a system that encourages exploitation, then what are you going to get? Don't be, you have to create the system in order to facilitate things like cooperation, collaboration, compassion, real justice, where it's based on the people and the human beings, not instead of money. But that's not the system that we live in. The system that we live in is called capitalism. And its primary function is to serve what's in the name. Capital. Capital is just another name for money, right? Sometimes it's another name for resources. But that's all it's based on. It's not based on anything human. It's not based on anything social. It's not based on anything communal. It is based on money. And so therefore, who comes second, third, or fourth in line? You and I. Because you facilitated a type of system that encourages the growth of that. If money was a person, money would be the best kept person in this world, but it's not. So you have to have a system that focuses on people first, and then everything else can fall into place. But that's not the system that we live in. So, yeah. Let's go to Kevin. Kevin says America is the disgrace to human history forever. Unfortunately, when you start out with doing genocide of Native Americans and then enslaving Africans from West Africa, chicken's coming home to roost. That's the only thing I can put it. Chicken's coming home to roost. That's the way the United States is really, is yes. And you're right. Collective karma is coming to the West. Absolutely. Because this country is on its way out. Look, get your affairs in order, right? Get your affairs in order. learn to protect yourself and start building community because it's going down. You got CBC voter coming in saying happy Sunday at Jaybe. Good to see you, CBC voter. Nice to have you. Terry Connolly says, greetings, comrade. Good to see you, Terry. Son, said hello, JB. Oh my goodness. Sunshine. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry. You just reminded me of that song. Bad Wolf says, I woke up just in the nick of time. Mean JB tone. Good to see you. Hellfire Heart says, greetings, comrade, for the greater good. Greetings to you as well. Nice to have you. Vicky says, morning, Jay. Good morning to you. So it's morning where you're at. Well, happy sunrise. All right. DJ Leader says, looking healthy, brother. Super Sunday to all the RBN fam and JB. Thank you so very much, DJ. Appreciate it a lot. All right. On the Rumble side, we have Jay Mead says, good morning, JB. Good morning to you as well. Nice to have you in here to say hello. We have Kalimba coming in saying, Noah, wake up. All right. So we got that there. All right. And who else? Daniela says, hi, everyone. And then let me do like one or two more. We got Jacqueline coming in saying, I bet that getting rid of the communists in the 50s with the McCarthy witch hunts was the first salvo in the neoliberal strategy. It definitely was. First, they came for the communists, but I did not speak out before I was not a communist. So this is just a long form version of what happened in 1930s Germany. But oh, you're not a bootlicker. And thank you very much. That's very sweet of you. I really appreciate it. It definitely means a lot. Rich says JB font always based. Thank you so very much. You guys are really kind. You guys are really kind, very sweet people. Kwaku says, hey, good to see you, comrade. Been following for a second. Good to see you're real. Yeah, thank you very much. Good to see you as well. And we will continue. And then we'll do one more. Kaneen says, small business lobbied against the PRO Act in North Carolina. It was the Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Yeah, and the Restaurant and Hospitality Association is really... Isn't that like an amalgamation of a bunch of like corporate chains and stuff like that? You know, a lot of them will do that, or the ones that are very like hoity-toity and like more affluent. It's like, yeah, we're the restaurants, and you know, we want this association to be for us as small business owners. Meanwhile, the little mom and pop shop with a hole in the wall restaurant that ain't got much, that's serving good food, right? The food is good, but they don't have a say in how things go at all, right? It's crazy. It's always a class issue too. It's a class issue even when it comes to businesses. Certain businesses are put up above one another. Anyway, so let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. Good to see you all. Thank you so very much for joining. Let's look at our thumbnail and go over what we're going to be doing today. So less protection for you. This is what we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the hour. So we're going to be talking about Trump really gutting the FTC, or really kicking out the top brass of the FTC, really because of partisan politics, and which does nobody any good. If somebody's still doing a good job in protecting the people, then I say keep them. But at the same time, it's like, you're doing it because they have a particular political ideology. And I'm like, if they're doing a good job, who cares? Right. But really is for the benefit of the corporations, and really for the disadvantagement of people like you, me, and also a lot of business owners, small business owners. So this is why it says less protection for you. But the first story we're going to be talking about is something that got me riled up, that got me fired up. This is, if you are in Orlando and you have seen the crisis that we have, also known as the homelessness crisis, this story will piss you off. Not off, off. Who is that man in the three-piece suit? That is Mayor John Buddy Dyer, the mayor of Orlando. And we're going to talk a little bit about him. We're going to talk about this proposal, the newest homeless shelter, and why is there a Greyhound bus behind him? Let's get into that right now. So here in Orlando, we have a housing crisis that's growing. Our population is exploding because a lot of people from Michigan, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, a lot of these people who live in the northern states are moving down here because, number one, Florida doesn't have a state income tax. Number two, the cost of living to them at the time is better. So let's say if you still work from home and you're working in New York and you're getting a New York rate for your work, but you're working from home and you can work online, you just move down here, you're still getting the same rate, right? But you move down here, and then the median income to afford housing is actually lower than it is in New York, which means you're actually able to make your dollar go further. So a lot of people are doing that right now. A lot of people are moving here. I'm a transplant from New Jersey, back in the 1980s. But here's the problem. Our homelessness is growing. And before we get into the whole Greyhound bus situation, I want to cover what has been happening in Orlando and the conversations that have been happening. I actually should have did a video portion of this, but it's okay because I got the news story. But let's take a look. So I want to share this article here. So this is out of Orlando Weekly. So it says Orlando won't pursue Soto South Downtown homeless shelter, Mayor Buddy Dyer says. This is after an assessment and an outcry from area residents. The site was determined to be not feasible. First of all, here's the point. I want people to know this. When we talk about class and the people who are more affluent having a voice, when people were flooding the city council meetings and trying to stop the city from criminalizing homelessness, and there was an outcry about that, they didn't listen. There was a massive outcry. Like, no, don't do that. You're criminalizing homelessness. But they did it anyway. But it depends on who the outcry is coming from. And so since those people who are in a few tax brackets above people like myself, they get more of a voice, even in local politics. And I'm doing this story because some people may go, oh, well, this is just Orlando. It doesn't really matter. No. All politics is local, baby. And if this idea is happening in Orlando, then who is to say it's not going to happen in Tampa, then in Miami, then in Jacksonville, then in Atlanta, then it moves over to Raleigh, then it moves over into a city in Alabama, then it moves over into Dallas, then it moves over, and then somebody in St. Paul or Minneapolis decide to do it. So keep in mind that this can happen to homeless people. And by the way, you are more closer to homelessness than any of these billionaires or corporate dictators. So therefore, you're going to want to pay attention, because when it comes to capitalism, You have one foot on the grave and another foot on a banana peel. So let's continue this. So this is the facility that they were going to transfer into a homeless center. I know exactly where this is because it's right near me. It says Orlando will no longer pursue the creation of a homeless shelter in a former work release facility in South Downtown SoDo, Mayor Buddy Dyer announced Monday. The site along West Cayley Street is proposed as a potential shelter location by city officials, but after an assessment, it was deemed to be not feasible. Now, just to let you know, what is within this area? There's a couple of like imaging centers, doctor's offices. Across the street from this, directly across the street from this area, is actually the Orange County Supervisor of Elections. So when you're going to vote for whatever election that you need to, that's where you go. That's directly across the street from there, right? The main Supervisor of Elections building, which is on Cayley. Now, Cayley, you can divide Cayley into two sides. You have Orange Avenue, that's in the middle, right? On the east side of Cayley, you have the Delaney area, the downtown area, the more affluent, the people with the nice homes, right? You have Boone High School, which is a predominantly white high school, all that nice stuff. On the west side of Orange Avenue, down Cayley Street, then that's when you start to get to the Black neighborhoods. This is where you get, the Gore and Paramore, right? And the Westmoreland. This is where you get, as you continue down that way, you get to OBT, right? And then you start to get to the areas, where, a lot of people who are not as affluent or people who are poor or working poor live. So Orange Avenue is the dividing line, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay. So the people on the east side, the more affluent, wealthy, more white. The people on the west side, more destitute, Black, economically disadvantaged. Okay. All right. So why was it not feasible? Let's continue. It says the proposal was introduced last year with an agreement between Orange County and the city of Orlando that addressed a number of unresolved issues between the two. According to the agreement, the city would have leased a vacant space from the county for $1 per year for 7 years. So $7 basically to lease it, for the city to lease it from the county, right? I say that's a pretty good deal. I can afford that. Since the proposal came out, residents of the neighborhood just a mile east of the facility have campaigned against it. I'm going to read that again. Since the proposal came out, the residents of the neighborhood just a mile east of the facility have came against it. A February town hall meeting saw dozens of residents express concern over the proposed shelter, whether its proximity to their neighborhood will harm the community. Remember what I just said. The people in the Delaney area, the people near Boone High School, the people in all that area where downtown Orlando, where you see the nice 2-story houses with the nice properties, where they got the nice brick roads and all that. Yeah, these are the people who are a mile away from this. They're mad because they were going to turn a facility that is on the west side of Cayley, but just on the west side of Cayley, right before you get to Orange Avenue. They don't want a homeless shelter built there. Meanwhile, the actual people who live on the west side, they don't get a voice. They don't get listened to. Right? Say it ain't so. No. Let's continue. All right. So Orange County would recently approve a local law that complies with the new Florida law, which went into effect on October 2024, that prohibits sleeping or camping on public property overnight. The city has seen local law enforcement arrest of homeless people, while local homeless service agencies voice concern over where they're supposed to go. So, with that being said, that homeless shelter that was supposed to be built on the west side of Orange Avenue on Cayley Street got knocked down by the residents who live on the east side of Cayley that are a mile away. And they're like, you know what? Nah, we don't want that. So it's a bunch of NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Because they're thinking, well, that's going to be more. This mean my homeless people may venture a mile out to our house and stink up our neighborhood. They might ask us for money. Oh no. So they shot it down. Because Mayor Buddy Dyer listens to the wealthier and unfortunately white constituents. Now, he doesn't care about the poor white constituents, right? Those who live in like Winter Garden and shit like that. No, he doesn't care about them, right? But the one wealthier that are predominant, and it's a predominantly white area. Oh yeah. He's going to listen to them. Because they're the ones who he feels have more power to say, to have the will, what the city says and does. And, I don't know. I can't remember if Buddy Dyer is going to go for another term or not. He shouldn't, but I don't remember if he said he was going to go for another term. But even still, he's listening to just one side of his constituents. Some of these constituents are landlords. Some of these constituents are people that work in downtown Orlando, at the top of the corporate offices. Some of these constituents are the lawyers and people like that are, living more comfortably. But I guess the homeless can't have a shelter, right? Well, at least not a shelter on a concrete foundation. They can get one on wheels, though. Let's go into this. Dyer did not state Monday whether Orlando has immediate plans for a different shelter location, although the city did directly announce that officials are eyeing another solution: Greyhound buses transformed into mobile shelters. The seats would be replaced with beds to house up to 20 people in each. Greyhound buses, you said. Now, this is the point where I go apeshit. Because a bunch of NIMBYs on the east side of Cayley decide, well, we don't want a homeless shelter built there because we're so concerned about our housing prices. We're so concerned about our property value, right? That people who are unhoused, no, we don't want it, right? Even though it's on really the west side of Orange Avenue on Cayley, and they're on the east side, But on top of that, now they're saying that they want to put homeless people on Greyhound buses. I'm not laughing. Is this some kind of sick joke? You know what really grinds my gears is the fact that people will go, oh, well, let's put homeless people in tiny houses. Let's put them in shipping containers. Let's put them in buses. Buddy Dyer, you and city council, you guys are blowing minds right now because these aren't animals. These are people. People, human beings. And you want to just, we can't have an actual shelter. And then so we're just going to put them on Greyhound buses, 20 beds in each. Let me share. So that's why I wanted to preface that. I wanted to set it up because that's why they did that. Now, here goes the next article, the main article I want to talk about. So, Orlando's set to approve $3 million deal to shelter homeless people in retrofitted buses. This comes after city leaders killed plans for a new homeless shelter in Soto earlier this month. This article only came out 2 days ago. Let's get into it. It says after it was just reported that Orlando police have arrested roughly 24 people in January for having nowhere else but public property to sleep at night, the Orlando Sentinel broke the news that the new solution to get people off the streets was on its way: buses. On Monday, the Christian Service Center, a local service nonprofit in Orlando that offers daytime services for homeless people, is set to ink a $3 million agreement with the city for the project, which is based off of a mobile emergency shelter concept called the Dignity Bus Model. Let me just preface this by saying, I'm not going to get into it right now, but if you compare the amount of unhoused people in Orlando compared to the vacant housing units that we have in Orlando, the vacant housing units are through the roof as compared to the unhoused people. And yet we're going to put them on buses and call it dignified. Buddy Dyer, the mayor of Orlando, is a Democrat, by the way. The governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is a Republican. So when we talk about walking away from both parties, well, you see. Let's continue in the article. It says the concept developed by the Vero Beach-based nonprofit, The Source, involves retrofitting of buses to include sleeping pods, storage compartments, restrooms, pet compartments, and a comprehensive surveillance. It says the Orlando City Commission is scheduled to approve the funding agreement on Monday during their regularly scheduled council meeting. The goal of the project is to offer safe, legal place for people to sleep, with the goal of moving them expeditiously to permanent housing, according to the city's funding agreement. The Christian Service Center requested the city reimburse them $350,000 for 2 former Greyhound buses that can fit a minimum of 39 sleeping pods. So it's not even 40, it's 39. Once retrofitted to include beds, these buses will be parked at the Christian Service Center next to the Inter and Company soccer stadium on Paramore at night. By the way, the entire area of Paramore, a whole bunch of people's houses and businesses were basically taken by eminent domain to build a soccer stadium in Orlando because they wanted to increase the revenue. And so what about the people who actually lived in that area? What about the houses that people were going to inherit? Meanwhile, we're holding Orlando City soccer games at that stadium, right? But then it's only for like teams that were within the United States. When they have international teams, right, that come, they don't hold it at the soccer stadium, even though that's what it's built for. They hold it at Camping World Stadium because it holds more people. But y'all could have used Camping World Stadium for both. But you guys wanted to build a new soccer stadium instead. Camping World Stadium is in the middle of the hood, as well as the new soccer stadium is also in the middle of the hood. They wouldn't dare do the same thing to the houses there east of Orange Avenue in the Delaney street area. They wouldn't dare do it there. They wouldn't dare ask the people of Dr. Phillips to move their homes, to move out of their homes so that they can build a soccer stadium over there in Dr. Phillips. Dr. Phillips is in Orange County, but still, right? They wouldn't dare do that in places like Windermere and Isleworth. Oh, if we're talking about in Orlando, they wouldn't dare do it in Winter Park. Oh, hell no. Winter Park? No. Because Winter Park is the affluent area. All right, let's continue. So this is allegedly what the buses are going to look like. But is there any real privacy? Is there really any real dignity along with this? Because you're literally on a bus sleeping next to 19 other people, right? You're sleeping on a bus with 19 other people, and you're only able to sleep there, and use the bathroom at night. Who knows? Like they're probably going to kick you off the bus during the daytime because they like to do stuff like that. And is being done by the Christian Service Center. We're going to take a look at them too. It says operational costs for the project, including sleeping accommodations and case management services, are estimated about $1 million each year, totaling $3,092,446 over 3 years, according to the funding agreement. Not all the money will be paid up front. The project, over 3 years' time, will receive capital funding available through the city's Accelerate Orlando Fund, a $58 million pot of Federal American Rescue Plan Act money the city earmarked in 2022 specifically for projects to address the city's affordable housing crisis. Now, here we go. Average rents in Orlando are up more than 30% since 2019, with the average one-bedroom apartment costing just about $1,000 per month, which was in 2019. So if you add 30% on top of that, what does that give you? It says today, rents are slightly lower than they were a year ago on average, but for many other regions who didn't see their wages or Social Security income rise as housing costs did, paying bills has become increasingly difficult task. So Let's talk about rent, shall we? As far as the most expensive states in these United States, do you know where Orlando falls? We'll get back to the article in a second, but I'm just going to share this with you guys because I think this is important as well. Anyone? In fact, let me see. What is in your view? Where does Orlando fall as far as the most expensive states in the country? What would you think? Go ahead in the chat. Anybody? Go ahead. Throw out a number. Out of 50, where do you think Florida falls? Go ahead. Is it number 30? Is it number 15? Is it number 48? Okay. So as far as the most expensive, Child of God thinks is the 49th in the country. Let me see. Vicky says the 48th in the country as the between the when it comes to cost in the nation. Rich says top 10. Hen's Teeth says 10. Hellfire Host Heart says 9. Dr. Donnie says 44. Rondo says, I think they're probably in the top 10. Sam Queen says 6. Red Scare Claire says Florida as a whole, 6. Okay. So let me show you guys where Florida falls as the most expensive state in the United States. So this is the out of reach analysis from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Here's Florida. Let me show you guys Florida. Here's Florida, right? Here's the entire country. Florida's a dark blue, right? You see the other ones that are dark blue? Here's Florida. 10th. The 10th most expensive state in the United States is Florida. A red state, a southern state, is the most expensive state in Florida. You need to make at least $35.24 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in this state. That's how expensive Florida has become. So when people go, oh my God, Florida, things must be so cheap. No. Now, you want to know what the top 5 cities are that are the most expensive in Florida? Let's take a look. And shout out to Roger Meadows for screenshotting all these for us because, you're a real one. But I think it's important to know also what's the top 5 cities, right? So Florida is in the top 10. So Florida is literally the 10th most expensive state in our country, is within the top 10. And I want to share this with you guys. Computer's working a little slow today. Probably need to delete some tabs too. Oh yeah, I need to delete that tab. I can take that away. Okay. Is it loading? Okay. There we go. So let's go to Florida. Right? So let me try to see if I can enlarge. So of course, Florida is the 10th, right? $35.24 an hour, right? It says in Florida, the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,833. In order to afford this level of rent and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $6,109 monthly or $73,308 annually. Assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year, this level of income translates into an hourly wage of $35.24 an hour. Now, the top 5 cities in Florida. Let's make it big. The first one is Miami Beach and Kendall. Then the next is West Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Monroe County, right? Fort Lauderdale. And look at here, Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford. My neck of the woods. The top 5 most expensive cities or areas within Florida. Now, Orlando, Kissimmee, and Sanford basically is Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. Right? And that is how expensive it's getting here. Because we have a lot of people, because of the desperate situation that they're put in, because of things being so expensive in northern states, they're moving down here in order to make it. And now it's causing housing expenses to rise so far that those of us who have been here for a long time, or those of us that are native people from Orlando or Florida, is choking us out of the market. This is what I like to call intra-country or intracontinental gentrification. Because you have people who make more in another state and they're coming here in order to make it, but at the same time, it displaces the people who have already been here. So when people talk about, oh, just move to another state, that doesn't work. Because it's the system that's the problem. Telling people to move to another state is just an individualistic solution to a systemic problem. Because, yes, you can move to North Carolina. You can move to South Carolina. You can move to Arizona. You can move to Texas. You can move to Alabama. You can move to Louisiana. You can move to Georgia. Fine, go ahead. But guess what? Within about a decade, everything's going to start looking like New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Because all of you guys are moving down here. And guess what? Everybody start to elevate their prices. Because they see you guys coming from they can smell you. They can smell you. They're like, these guys are Northerners. You hear that accent? I pull up my car. Like, I pat my car and have it yard. Or New York, I pull up my car and have it yard. Yeah, they hear you. And they're like, let's raise these rents. But then when we, who have been living here for a long ass time, or when we who are native try to get the rents in here, well, sorry, this is the rent now because it's on and popping because all these people from up north actually can afford these rents. So guess what? That displaces us more, and now we are pushed out. Which also means a lot of people that are pushed out onto the streets because of the housing prices. See how it works? You can't fix a systemic problem with an individual solution. It doesn't work that way. And that's what we're constantly being told to do. So thank you very much to Roger Meadows for that. I want to get back to this as well. So it continues, says a point in time count conducted last year found a 105% rise in the number of people in the Tri-County region over the 3-year period who lack shelter. 105%. I want you guys to 105% of unhoused people in 3 years. Do you think that this is sustainable? Do you think that we'll be able to keep this up? $105%. Let's continue. Altogether, volunteers counted 2,776 people who lack stable housing. According to Martha Are, CEO of the Homelessness Services Network of Central Florida, a nonprofit that conducted the count, there has been a considerable rise, specifically in older and elderly people who have been forced out of their homes. Look, there's been a considerable rise, specifically in older and elderly people who have been forced out of their homes. Remember what I said earlier before we started this segment about Doge and how they're trying to touch Social Security? You don't think that that's going to cause a larger rise in homelessness, especially among our mothers and our fathers and our grandmothers and our grandfathers and our aunties and our uncles? You don't think that's going to cause a bigger rise in homelessness? And you're like, oh my God, the homeless problem is so bad. What are we going to do about it? Well, guess what? You're putting gasoline on the fire. You're sitting there going, oh, we got to get rid of this fire. And there you go. You're putting gasoline all over it. And then now, guess what? It's going to be your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your uncle, your grandmama, your granddaddy that's going to be out in the street. Because this system is unsustainable. And let's not forget the disabled people, the people who are disabled that'll also be out on the street, who are also overrepresented in homelessness. There's a lot of people who may have a physical and or intellectual disability who are out on the streets. It says, while most of the children identified has some form of shelter, if not a stable home, 50% of adults over the age of 64 who were homeless lacked any form of shelter at all. For many people who live on Social Security or pensions, the cost of housing, food, and medical care is simply outpacing the modest cost of living increases. Every month, our network sees about 1,000 individuals and families who are homeless for the first time. Orlando has consistently been flagged as one of the most cost-burdened metros in the United States. Roughly 60% of residents spent more than 30% of their income on housing costs as of last year. Now, Eric Gray, who is the CEO of the Christian Service Center and apparently candidate for the Orange County Board of Commissioners, described the mobile emergency shelter project to the Orlando Sentinel as brilliant in its simplicity. Mr. Gray, you know what's also brilliant in its simplicity? Just giving people housing. Just like, what are you doing? Buses? Brilliant in its simplicity? Spending $3 million over 3 years to retrofit buses to fit 40 people. $3 million over 3 years for 40 people? You mean to tell me that you can't just house people for that same price or maybe even less? You mean to tell me that the city can't build public housing and literally house all the homeless people? They can't set aside money to say, you know what? We're doing city-funded public housing. And people go, well, where are we going to get the money from? They already have over $50 million set aside. $50 million set aside since 2022 from the American Rescue Plan. You mean to tell me they can't use that to just build what, a high rise? Not even a high rise. They could build like an apartment community just for the unhoused. Oh, you're concerned about taxes going up? Okay. Well, here's another solution. Let's do a municipal public bank. Just like North Dakota has a Bank of North Dakota, well, the cities can actually do the same thing. On my channel, I talk to people like Alfeka Maturity and Nelson Betancourt about public banks. So if you guys want to, you guys can go to my channel and take a look at that. But public banks would basically just take the tax revenue that's pulled in from the city, put it in the market, make it grow, and then all that revenue is put back into the city budget in order to be able to do infrastructure projects. No tax increase at all. Could we do a public bank in the city of Orlando? Could we do a public bank in the city of Milwaukee? Could we do a public bank in St. Louis? How about Camden, New Jersey? How about Chicago, Illinois? What about Spokane, Washington? Right? There's really answers out there. But the problem is that that would mean they would give more power to whom? Us. Jesus Christ, these guys, I'm telling you. Anyway, it says, as part of what the city has dubbed its 407 Connection Project, a partnership between the Downtown Orlando Community Redevelopment Agency and the Christian Service Center, designed to minimize the impacts of homelessness persons in the area by providing a place off the streets for homeless persons within the area to be at night as well as during the day. A new state law, HB 1365, approved by the Florida legislature from Governor DeSantis last year, prohibits sleeping overnight on public property. It also allows individuals to sue any city or county that fails to enforce the law's statewide camping ban. This has increased the pressure on local governments like the city to find alternatives for people who with nowhere else to go. Homeless services advocates like RA have repeatedly emphasized that the current shelter capacity in Orange County, largely concentrated near downtown, which is Orlando, is full or otherwise insufficient to meet the needs of the people who don't meet shelter eligibility requirements. Yes, there's shelter eligibility requirements. Some of them happen to be that you actually have to worship with us, even though you're not in that religion. You have to worship with us in order to be able to be a part of that shelter. You have to go to these Bible study classes. Or you can't have a drug addiction. Or there's other different things that they probably are like, no, you can't. Is housing a right or is it not? Because we keep means testing and then we keep putting these eligibility factors for people to have housing, when in reality, if housing is a human necessity, then really it should be the first thing. You should get housing, boom. Oh, well, you have issues with substance abuse. Well, having a secure housing could also help alleviate that need for substance abuse. Having housing could help alleviate many of the worries and diseases of despair that happen to people in their minds, especially when they become homeless. It can also encourage people to be able to just, instead of always being on edge because they're always out in the street, to be able to relax and rest, to lower those cortisol levels so that they can actually start thinking a little bit more logically because they're no longer in fight or flight mode. So then they go, hey, I would like to do this type of job, or hey, I would like to go to school and do this or do that. And so the panhandling slows down. And the drug use may slow down. It may not go away completely, but it slows down. Or the drinking may slow down, right? And the factors that keep people in depression and anxiety start to go down. And then they start going to school, or they may get a job somewhere. Because you literally gave them one of the primary factors in their hierarchy of needs. That's the foundation. But you want them to do, it's like expecting somebody who is unhoused, who probably got addicted to substances while unhoused, trying to expect them to get rid of that addiction while they're unhoused is like trying to expect a first grader who's just learning adding and subtracting to suddenly, solve the Pythagorean theorem or do geometry. It's like, no, there are steps to this. There are levels to this. But they want you to go from crawling to riding a bicycle. It don't work like that, baby. Because you need that stability. You need that foundation first so that they can actually get rid of those diseases of despair, so that can be alleviated. But people suddenly think, oh my goodness, it's because they're on drugs. No, some people actually get addicted to drugs because they're homeless. You want to know here? Let me let you in on a little secret. Some people who are unhoused get addicted to drugs because those drugs are the ones that help them stay awake at night so that they don't get abused while they're sleeping, so that they don't get their stuff stolen while they're sleeping, so that they don't get messed with while they're sleeping. So it keeps them up. It keeps them wired. Or then they have to self-medicate because and some of them, if they do have mental health issues, is it alleviated anymore by being homelessness? No, it is actually exacerbated. It exacerbates the mental health issues. And then people go around looking at the unhoused who have mental health issues like, oh my God, they have to get rid of those mental health. They have to fix those mental health issues before they can have housing. Baby, you got it reversed. You want to help alleviate those mental health issues? You put them in housing first. And then that starts to alleviate some of the mental health issues because they're no longer homeless. Guess what you do? You end up helping them, and then they start to think, maybe I should get some help. But also that involves having healthcare for everybody free at the point of service. Yeah. All right. So let's finish this up. Says Orlando city leaders killed plans for a new shelter in DeSoto neighborhood earlier this month. All right. So I want to take a look at a couple things before we move on, because I think this is going to be important too. So when it comes to Orlando, I wanted to take a look at hang on. Is this the one? Okay. I think I found it. All right. I want to show you guys something at the Orlando Business Journal. Because I think this is going to show what's really going on. What's the zip code for that? Okay. All right. So just outside my zip code. So Orlando Business Journal says Orlando's most economically unstable zip codes revealed. So let's get into this, right? I know exactly where this is. And if you guys can see that closely, right here in the middle, down the street, that's the new soccer stadium that they built, right? This is Paramore that leads straight to the soccer stadium. So this is the area that's the most economically disadvantaged. Remember when we were talking about the area where it's on the west side of Orange Avenue? This is the west side of Orange Avenue. Okay. So let's take a look. It says some of Orlando neighborhoods are struggling in important metrics that signify instability. For residents of Paramore and in areas adjacent, poverty, high school dropout rates, and vacancy rates are highest in the region. These components combine from an instability index, a measurement created by the Buffalo Business First and Orlando Business Journal sister newspaper that follows a similar theory as Jimmy Carter's misery index, according to the Buffalo Business First. The zip code 32805 is the most unstable in the region, as its instability index reaches 67.46% with high percentages of poverty, high school dropouts, and vacant homes. Just to let you guys know, you know where that homeless shelter was going to be built? 32806, right next door. By the way, also, just if anybody wants to know, I think it's also part of District 10, which is also Maxwell Alejandro Frost's district. One of the most unstable, poorest districts in Central Florida. Let's continue. So it says, however, this metric is not perfect. Some neighborhoods with high distress rates caused by high vacancy rates have low poverty and low dropout rates. And then it puts out examples. But here are the top 20 most distressed zip codes in Central Florida. So number one, you have 32805, which is the area where a lot of poor and disadvantaged people live, right near where the Orlando Soccer Stadium was built. This is a predominantly Black neighborhood, right? And when I say predominantly Black, I mean predominantly Black American neighborhood. Freedmen, descendants of slaves. That's where it is, right? 32805 is, same area as Camping World Stadium. Same area where the headquarters or the OPD is located. So this is where it's at, and where a lot of the organization is coming on Thursday, Real Orlando, where they conduct a lot of their service to the community, is within 32805. That zip code. And these are the same people that didn't have a voice when it came to saying yay or nay to a homeless shelter being built within the area, which is right across the railroad tracks and across the street from the supervisor of elections building on the west side of Orange Avenue. I'm sorry, of Cayley. And so these are the same people that don't have a say. But yet the people who are a mile away on the east side of Orange County, I'm sorry, of Orange Avenue, down Cayley Street, they have a say more than the people on the west side, even though it would be on the west side. The next most economically unstable zip code is 32839. 32839 is definitely Maxwell Frost's his district. 32839 is also the area where the Millennium Mall has been built. It's one of the most expensive malls in Orlando. It has a road that leads down as Conroy Road that leads directly to the richest areas in Orange County. And those richest areas are places like Windermere and Isleworth. And who works over there? That's a predominantly Black and brown neighborhood with a lot of immigrants, a lot of Haitian immigrants, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. Not Puerto Ricans aren't immigrants, but Puerto Rican transplants from Puerto Rico. A lot of, it has significant Haitian population. And so that's also a very poor and disadvantaged area, right? A lot of the kids there go to, so you have the two high schools, 32805 services primarily Jones High School, which is a predominantly Black high school, right? And then 32839 services Oak Ridge High School, which is a predominantly Black and brown high school. Okay? And so these areas are all on the west side of Orange Avenue and Orange Blossom Trail. And a lot of these people work in the service sector. So they work in the hotels, they work in retail, they work in the theme parks, they'll work at the Disneys, they'll work at the SeaWorld, they'll work at Universal Orlando, places like that. That's where they work. And then they'll also work in the shops at like the Millennium Mall where they're not receiving a living wage. And so they live in these economically depressed areas where you see homeless and unhoused people every single day of the week. By the way, I've lived in both of these areas. Hell, I still live in one of those areas. So trust me, I literally can speak from experience. And so these are some of the most depressed areas. The third one is 32811. And then, of course, then you go to Daytona Beach, Kissimmee, and then Orlando. Orlando's carrying, the brunt of the most economically depressed areas. And then you go, well, who's running the city? Who's running things? Like, my God, like, why haven't they made things better? Let's go to the mayor, shall we? The mayor of Orlando. He likes people to call him buddy, but he's no buddy to poor people. He's no buddy to working class people. He's buddy to the rich. Let's take this. Did he go? My computer's working very slow today. Okay. So this is the mayor of Orlando. They call him Buddy Dyer, but his name is John Hugh Buddy Dyer. So John, right? Says an American, oh my goodness, American politician who has served as the mayor of Orlando since 2003. Hold up. You guys heard? Wait, hold up. What? Browser can't access your screen. What the hell? Okay. Okay. I'll read again. So it's an American politician who served as mayor of Orlando since 2003. Here's the thing. 2003. That's 22 years ago. You mean to tell me that this man has been serving as the mayor of Orlando for 22 years? And our homeless rate's been going up? And then people talk about, well, the Democrats actually care more about homelessness. A member of the Florida Democratic Party, he's Orlando's longest serving mayor. He previously served as representative for Orlando in the Florida State Senate from 1992 to 2002, with the last 2 years serving as a Senate Democratic leader. So he's a Democrat. And yeah, 105% increase in unhoused people over 3 years under Buddy Dyer's leadership. And now we're trying to put homeless people on buses? Say it ain't so. And so, of course, he has been of course he was someone who has been challenged really by especially local activist groups, especially for his policies that he's been spearheading to criminalize homelessness. Particularly, Real Orlando has actually been going to city council meetings to actually speak and challenge him on the anti-homeless policies and city ordinances that have been pushed by people like Buddy Dyer. And yet Buddy Dyer just looks at you and thinks, well, you don't know as much as I do in this city. I've been mayor of Orlando since 2002. So that's who is running the city, right? Let me share this as well, because I also want to talk about the Christian Service Center, because I think that's also pertinent information. The Christian Service Center, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that operates in Orlando, has a revenue of $3.49 million. That was in 2023. Their expenses were $3.7 million. Total assets is $2.66 million. Total liabilities is $2.55 million. And so this is the revenue, $3,489,253. So that's the Christian Service Center. I want to look at the people who are at the top. So I did. And I was kind of surprised at this, because I was like, is this right? So let's take a look. Compensation. Key employees and officers. Eric Gray, who is the executive director of the Christian Service Center, got $156,166, right? So basically that's his yearly compensation. But when you look at Janice Hagensticker, who is the vice president, doesn't get any compensation. And Walter Carpenter, who's the director, gets no compensation. That's interesting. You mean to tell me that this guy gets $156,000 a year? And then the other leadership doesn't get anything? Now, the money that could have went to the Christian Service Center could have went to just straight up housing. Because I actually looked up the amount of housing stock and the amount of homeless people that are in Orlando. So let's take a look at the homeless population. Homeless population says in Central Florida region, including Orlando, saw a significant increase in homelessness, with 2,883 people identified as homeless, including 1,201 unsheltered individuals. Now, so let's take the 2,883 people plus the 1,201, and let's just, for all intents and purposes, let's just round it up to 5,000. 5,000 people, right? We're rounding up. Let's take a look at the housing stock, the vacant housing stock that the Orlando area has. Let's take a look here. Here's from Wesh, Channel 2. It says Orlando named most vacant major U.S. city. That was in 2022. Let me close that out. It says data company Clever Real Estate has ranked Orlando as the #1 city in the country with the highest vacancy rate. According to the company's study, Orlando's vacancy rate exceeds 15%, the only major city to do so. In total, they say close to 161,000 housing units sit vacant in Orlando. 3 other Florida cities also ranked on the top. Miami was the second on the list. Tampa was the third, and Jacksonville the 7th. The study says the majority of the areas with high vacancies, include Orlando, are located in tourist-centric regions that tend to have a lot of vacancies associated with unused seasonal homes. Local real estate broker Antonio Serrato told Wesh 2 that they may be true, but he doesn't believe it paints a full picture of Orlando's housing market. I think it relates to our market locally. High vacancy rate is not a good indicator of our market performance. Now, 160,000 housing units that sit vacant in Orlando. And how many unhoused people, homeless people that I said that we rounded up to? I said 5,000. So, if you're costing about $1 million, right, to house and do services for 40 people over the year, so let's do it. $1 million divided by 40 people, that's $25,000 per person, right? Okay, so $25,000 per person. Let's see, how much money would it cost for a 1-bedroom apartment? Well, a 1-bedroom apartment within the Orlando area, with around the median Orlando area rent, would be about $1,300. Let's just say, just for the sake of argument, $1,400. So $1,400 per month. Let's times that by 12. That means that you're spending $16,800 per month. I'm sorry, per year, to house one individual. Right? So not $25,000, $16,800. Couple that with some services, then you probably may be looking some administrative services to help out the unhoused, along with utilities. You may be looking at 21, 22, maybe $23,000 a year to help an unhoused person. Yet we're spending money more than that to put them on buses. we could be putting them in 1-bedroom housing units. And yet the city is wasting money on the nonprofit industrial complex. That's right, I'm going to call it out. Because some of these services only exist because homelessness exists. And they don't want homelessness to cease to exist, because then they cease to exist. So they have to keep the problem going so it justifies their existence. And this is the problem with the nonprofit industrial complex. A lot of times what they'll do is that they want to keep these things in place just so it justifies their existence. And so we're spending all this money with a temporary solution for unhoused people. And this is why I talk about doing mutual aid and building dual power and helping out your community and getting to know your neighbors. Because with that, you start to get to the heart of the real issue. It is systemic. And another thing I wanted to think about that really grinds my gears is, okay, I did the math. And if they were to put them in housing units, but what if the city actually owned its own housing and housed all the homeless? What if they built on public property, on public ground, a city-owned apartment complex with units for all the unhoused? What if they did that? And then they had services for those people so that when they want to get a job, when they want to go to school, when they need mental health services and the like, they have it readily available to them. What if you were to do that? Wouldn't it also save us money because we actually own the property, so therefore profit incentive is not there? And like I said, when it comes to having a municipal public bank, you can actually build the public bank, have the public bank raise tax revenue in the markets, and then put it back into the city, and then that city uses that revenue in order to build infrastructure so that we get rid of homelessness. The answers are right there. But the problem is that this is what happens when corporations run your city. This is what happens when real estate developers run your city. This is what happens when landlords run your city. And then you get a bunch of NIMBYs that actually don't want homeless people to have a place to go. So I want to do stories like this because it's local. All politics is local, but I want you guys to start looking more deeper into what's going on within your cities too. Because it directly affects you and your loved ones in the area. And other cities will start to adopt. Look what they did. They adopted the same program that Vero Beach had. And now they're trying to put people on buses. So what's to say that this is not going to go to other places? What's to say this is not going to go to Sarasota? Or what this is not going to go to Daytona or Deltona or Ybor City? Or what if this starts to go to other cities, within Central Florida or outside of that? What if this starts going to places like Claremont and Mineola? And then starts moving over to your state where they just want to put people on buses. When in reality, they could just actually just put them in actual long-term housing. This is why it is important to focus on the local as well. And by the way, I had looked up something else as well. Let me see. I had looked up there was another metric that I saw that I wanted to, yeah. And by the way, let me show this as the last point. Is that what I was looking for? That's not what I was looking for. I'm sorry. Hang on. There was another metric that I saw. Where did I put it? It's in one of these tabs. Or did I? Okay. I can pull it up right now. Okay. I got it right here. Okay. So, all right. So let me share this. I must have accidentally took the tab down, but here's homelessness in Orlando by race. It says in Orlando, Black individuals experience homelessness at a disproportionate higher rate compared to their representation in the general population, with 47.8% of those experiencing homelessness being Black, while 29.86% are white and 22.34% are of other races. So, oh, I did have it. Okay. So, is this showing? Okay, good. So I didn't take it down, but I was confused where I was at. Okay. Racial representation. It says, citing in July 2022 data from the U.S. Census Bureau showing Central Florida's race breakdown of 74.4% white, 17.03% Black, and 8.5% of other races, the PIT survey points to an overrepresentation of Black population experiencing homelessness in the survey area, where some 47.8% of those experiencing homelessness are Black, 29.86% are white, and 22.34% are other races. So, we're 17% of the population in Orlando, but we're almost 50% of the homeless in the same area. 17% of the population, but almost a clear majority, almost 50% of the homeless in Orlando. So when you're talking about cutting and gutting and also moving homeless services to put people in buses, the majority of people who you're trying to do that to are Black people. And a lot of these Black people are not young. They're Black people who are 50, 55, 60 years old. Some of them who may be getting Social Security, but because they can't afford it now because of the housing costs, and as well as people like Elon Musk and Doge wanting to mess with Social Security, well, they're going to end up out on the street. So yeah, this is why it is such an important topic, and I wanted to cover this. So this is why we got to get rid of homelessness, and we will do it. It just takes a matter of who wields the power in the government, corporations or the workers. So thank you very much. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in for this portion. And just give me one. That's what happens when family comes over. They like to play music. All right. All right. So with that being said, let's go into the comments in the chat. Let me check on the Rockfin to see if we have any Rumble rants first, and then we'll go. I'm sorry, to Rumble, and then we'll see any Rumble rants. Okay, no, not yet. And then we'll go into the Rockfin to see if we have any tips on Rockfin. No tips, but I'll still go there anyway. Hang on, let me make sure. Okay. Let's go to Rockfin really quick. I gotta hurry up though because that segment went a little long. Stop being so long-winded. Anywho, so let's go into this. So Roger Meadow says, "Sorry, no Momo. That's okay. But here's the thing: they are pushing Social Security recipients to their website, knowing damn well most are not computer savvy like Sagar can't comprehend. This forces recipients to show up at the office in person." Let me stop right there because here's the thing. A lot of the people, like for instance, here in Orlando, the Social Security office is on, I think it's called Gatlin Avenue. That Social Security office is overburdened. And if you show up there without having an appointment, which is a lot of people will do, that Social Security office, you will be sitting there between 3 and 4 hours before you get seen. And that was before Doge, not after. And so since they're cutting the workforce in Social Security, which also probably means some people who actually work at the offices, then that means that a lot of people are going to be waiting even longer for services. And then what? Then what? So that's one of the biggest issues, right? Continuing on with what Roger was saying. However, they want you to make an appointment over the phone, which will cause bottlenecking in the system to make a case for why to privatize by handing it over to Wall Street, like corporations did with the pensions via 401k. Now, add the closing down of Social Security buildings where they must travel farther. What if you, as a senior, have to depend on public transportation? People help your grandparents' parents by going online for them. It will be quicker. Play the following link of your FTC story. Good news about the FCT to counter the bad news. It was about 4 weeks ago. So I say do your bad news first and then play this one. Okay. Oh my goodness. And play what you can. Okay. All right. So that will be part of the next segment. So thank you very much, Roger. Let's go into the rest of the chat. I think I saw a super chat come in. Let me make sure I start that. Was there any more super chats? I don't think so. Just checking through. All right, I think we're good for the most part. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So I'll start off with the super chat. Thank you to Chuck says, my libertarian friend is starting to make sense saying that government gets in the way of us banding together with regulations and laws preventing us from actually feeding and housing fellow humans. Please discuss. So, like I said, thank you very much for this question, Chuck, or this request. So government is like a tool. It's like a hammer. It can be used to build or it can be used to destroy. The question is, who builds the hammer? You know the phrase, guns don't kill people, people kill people. If somebody shoots somebody, am I going to be mad at the gun or am I going to be mad at the shooter? I'm mad at the shooter because they're the ones who are wielding the weapon, right? But that being said, if you have, let's say the government is a hammer and you have an axe murderer that is wielding that hammer, well, they're going to go on a killing spree, aren't they? Because when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they're going to go on a killing spree because it's in the hands of a genocidal axe murderer. But if you put the hammer in the hands of a construction worker, well, that construction worker is going to use it more efficiently to build. So it depends on who has control of the government. And we all know that corporations have control of the government, which means that if corporations have the control of the government, who doesn't? Us. All of us. And so when people say government doesn't work, it actually does. It just depends on who government works for. So when people are like, oh my God, the government, they're surveilling us and all this and that. Who is running the government? It's the corporations. They're the ones that want you surveilled. They're the ones that want to take away your free speech protections. They're the ones that are making it so that our cost of living is up on the rise. So it comes about who is the one that runs the government. And the problem is, a lot of times people are like, well, government just gets in the way. It's not government gets in the way. It's who running the government that gets in the way. And that's the point. Because it can be used as a tool to build or used as a tool to destroy. And right now it's being used to destroy. So because it's being used to destroy, that means that what do we have to do in order to make government actually work for us? Well, you have to wrestle it out of the hands of the corporate powers, out of the owner class power, out owner class hands, because they're the ones that are gripping it tightly and saying, no, you can't have a better cost of living. No, you can't have a better rent. No, you can't have better wages. No, you cannot do any of these things that really would actually benefit the working class. And so if you were to switch and put it in the hands of the workers, that's when healthcare becomes a necessity. And everybody gets healthcare free at the point of service. That's when housing becomes a necessity. And we start to have a housing first model within this country. That's when education is seen as a human necessity. And therefore, access to education, higher education, would just be as simple as enrolling like you would in high school. But that's the thing. It's not in the hands of workers. And so therefore, this is why we have the system that we have. And I think, was it a Cambridge study that showed, help me out in the chat. Was it a Cambridge study that talked about how the people who are at the top, they have a bigger say over what the government does than the average citizens, or the wealthy have a bigger say over the government than us average citizens? I forget. I think it was a Cambridge study. If anybody can help me out in the chat. Anyway, but yeah, it was a study that was done, and it's like, duh, but they actually did a study, and it shows that they actually listen to them more than they listen to the rest of us. Um, Miriam says many years ago there was a news that in Puerto Rico thousands marched into the municipal building to oust their government out of office, and it worked. Wish it was that easy here. Yeah, wish it was. Let me see. Um, Two things. JB, one, why doesn't RBN have a Discord? We used to. It's just it's work to maintain. And I think, to be honest with you, all of us here at RBN were stretched to our limits. That's why we used to, but we no longer have a Discord. And two, what are your thoughts on Christian socialists who follow Christianity? Okay, let me address this one really quick. Christian socialists or Christian communists, however, the ones that are kind of like, that's really a majority of our early socialist revolutionaries were Christian. Christianity in its purest form, be careful, listen to what I say here, because I was an evangelical for almost 20 years. Christianity in its purest form goes parallel, side by side, with socialism. So when I look at somebody that's religious, but they believe that workers should own the means of production and distribution, that healthcare is a human necessity, that housing is a human necessity, that food is a human necessity, that education is a human necessity, that believes that none of these things that are vital for our survival should be paywall. Because like the Bible says, if you receive free, you give free. Because even God makes the sun shine upon the righteous and the unrighteous. He makes it rain upon the righteous and the unrighteous. Right? That even Jesus Christ himself gave away for free healthcare, free food. The fact that he actually took a rope, made it into a whip, and beat and chased the money changers out of the church, out of the temple. That tells me, and even in, I think it's 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 13 through 15. Hang on. Or is it 14 and 15? Okay. Yeah, it's 13 through 15. Hang on. Let's just hang on. No, not this time. No, it's 13 through 15. Let me share this with you, because this is, and I'm not trying to be preachy, but I'm answering your question here. They keep going to 14 and 15, but I want 13 through 15 because 13 is actually pretty. Hell. Let me do this. This is the easiest way I know how to do it. And this is going to answer your question. So I know exactly what to do. Okay, so I'm going to share this, and you guys can see how a Christian fits so perfectly with being socialist. So just to answer this question. So here it is. This is what Paul says at 2 Corinthians chapter 13, chapter 8, verses 13 to 15. He says, "For I do not want to make it easy for others, but difficult for you, but that by means of an equalizing your surplus at the present might offset their needs, so that their surplus might offset your deficiency, that there may be an equalizing, just as it is written, the person with much did not have too much, and the person with little did not have too little." So this was basically Paul talking to the first Corinthian the first century congregation in Corinth. This is in his second letter. And so he's basically saying that you guys are a community and you guys need to share your resources so that one person doesn't have too much and the other person doesn't have too little, so that then there's an inequality materially, right? Because this is how they helped out each other. They brought, their material with each other so that they, whether it was, they can bring grapes or olives from their fields, or if they have building materials or something like that, they actually brought it to the congregation to be able to help other members of the congregation. So really, this was a community effort to provide an equalizing so that not one person is materially above another. That being said, it was also in the same spirit of each according to his ability and each according to his need. So with that being said, Christianity, pure Christianity, is actually very congruent with socialism. So if somebody is a socialist and a Christian, I say, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. All right on. It's the others that I look at with disdain. Do you know what I mean? And this is why a lot of infiltration happened in the church. Because the Christian church used to actually be revolutionary. But because of COINTELPRO and all these other different programs where they did to try to take out the revolutionary energy, now we have all these people like Creflo Dollar and Joel Osteen and all these other people that are pushing capitalism within Christianity. So that was just to answer your question. I know it was a long-winded answer, but I had to put it that way. Anyway, so Child of God said no socialism is taken from what the early church was doing. It wasn't just the early church that was doing socialism, right? It wasn't something that the early church started and it became socialism. You also have many ancient cultures, especially indigenous cultures, that were practicing this even before the first century congregation that did it. So therefore, it's not an invention necessarily of the early church. It is really just human nature that says, okay, we need to cooperate and collaborate, and this is the best way to do it so we can move on together and survive and even thrive. The problem is that you have a whole bunch of people, especially during the first century, because you got to remember that, ancient Israel was actually ruled over by Rome at the time. And so therefore, they had a system of exploitation that they like to have, just like the United States. And so a lot of people who were part of the first century congregation were being exploited. Then you start to have different classes of people. So, yeah. Anyway, let me do a shout out to the patrons, and then we'll get into our final segments. But yes, shout out to the patrons on Patreon. For without you guys, we would not be able to do the work that we do, because without you guys, this just does not happen. So with that being said, we try to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk, especially here within, this channel. not only did we bring to you news, but we also try to provide an example out in these streets so that you can see what we're doing, and hopefully you'll imitate us so that we can start building class solidarity, so we can build worker solidarity, so we can build dual power, so we can actually change this system. And so this is the reason for RBN, and you guys actually make this possible for us to be able to do this by becoming patrons on Patreon. And it is really a labor of love, because and I hate to reveal a private conversation, but I think it's apropos for this. Me and Sabi constantly have this discussion of what matters more. Does the mission matter more, or does the money matter more? And we always say it's the mission that matters, every single time. The mission matters more than anything. If we need money, if we have to, we can get, a part-time job. But ultimately, it's the mission that matters. And what is the mission? Is to build ourselves a better world by the hands of the working class, by the hands of the proletariat, not by these politicians who say that they want to do things for us, but they don't. Not by the hands of these corporations who are exploiting us, but by the hands of the workers. And so this is why we have RBN, and we do it. And RBN exists also because there hasn't been a large Black presence on the left, besides just a few people who, we have seen and acknowledged and have been doing the work and actually helped encourage us to come into this space. So, this is why we exist, because there's not enough voices that look like us in this space. And it's also giving a perspective for people to be able to see, I never thought about it that way before. And so then we start to work towards something that is more equal and equitable for everyone. Because each person, each identity has a different need, but at the same time, we also have a shared need of, the means of production and the social services that we need as human beings, we also have those that need to be met as well. The material needs that have to be met as well. So that's one of the reasons why we do it. Thank you so very much. Now, with that being said, let's go into the final segment. This is really going to be a reaction to a video. So we're going to be talking about less protection for you. So this is going to be talking about Donald Trump and really his destruction of the Federal Trade Commission. So let's get into that. So Donald Trump is actually doing some things with the Federal Trade Commission. And I would like to get into that because I think, honestly, it is really indicative of what this country has led us to. That the protections for people, particularly small business workers, is being destroyed. And it's been, working towards this destruction with both parties, right? Some not doing as much as they should. And then because they're not doing as much as they should, then Republicans say, well, it's ineffective. And then the Republicans end up gutting it. And then, the Democrats cry, oh, my God, they're actually destroying this, when you could have actually bolstered it and made it even more better, which you didn't. And so let's take a look here. So this is going to be, shout out to Roger Meadows for this story. This was actually a really good one, and I wanted to make sure I talked about this. This is actually a good segment to get into. But the title is called Trump Fired Him for Prosecuting Corporate Crime. So let's get into this. Because as a hater of corporations myself, I want to see what Donald Trump is doing.
In the midst of the whirlwind of chaos that has long been Donald Trump's governing style, you can be forgiven for occasionally missing some really important news. Trump's administration just delivered an extraordinary gift to some of the most powerful corporate lawbreakers in America.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alvaro Bedoya, and I'm one of 2 commissioners at the Federal Trade Commission who the president is trying to illegally fire.
Breaking news on the FTC. Megan Cassell's got the details. Megan.
President Donald Trump has fired both Democratic commissioners on the FTC. That means that just 2 commissioners, 2 Republican commissioners, are operating on the FTC at this.
By attempting to sack Alvaro Bedoya, a key ally of former FTC chairwoman Lina Khan and Rebecca Slaughter, Trump has ensured that every member of the Federal Trade Commission now reports to him.
It will bring the independent regulatory agencies such as the FCC and the FTC back under presidential authority.
There's been a lot of talk from experts about how this move is illegal, and that's true. But there's also a much bigger issue at play here than the jobs of just 2 individuals. Here's what's critical to understand. Donald Trump is trying to kneecap one of the few agencies in Washington that is aggressively prosecuting corporations which have rigged the economy against working class Americans.
So, one of the things that, people need to realize is that, excuse me, if you are MAGA, and if you care about small businesses, just realize that the guy that you voted for does not care about small business. If you're a Trump voter and you care about small business, just realize that Trump does not care about small businesses. He never has. He never will. And as we can see now, he's making it abundantly clear. Are you listening? If you notice, one of the things that Trump is doing is everything that is about image and culture, nothing about actually improving the material conditions of Americans. He's behaving like a liberal. It's just he's performing for conservatives. What actual material good has he done for us? Because you can point to the tariffs, but the tariffs are really just going to be passed back on to you as the consumer. So no. And he's talking about, extra drilling. Well, yeah, I mean, that may help in the short term with some people being able to afford gas prices. But what about our waterways? And what about our environments? What about the places where you hunt and fish? Could be kind of hard to hunt and fish if you see that rainbow sheen in the water and this making the fish toxic. So you can't even take it home, scale it, gut it, fry it up. You can't even do that anymore. You can't hunt no more because the animals are leaving the area. But sure, I mean, at least gas prices are a little bit lower for now. Let's continue.
To understand what's going on, let's revisit Donald Trump's inauguration day.
Nobody's ever seen a dais like that. The inauguration. Zuckerberg, this one, that one, Microsoft, everybody.
Many of these same billionaires who were at Donald Trump's inauguration and contributed millions of dollars to him are under investigation by the Federal Trade Commission.
I am currently suing Amazon in not 1, but 2 lawsuits. I am enforcing a 20-year privacy consent decree against X. I am sitting as a judge in a matter where FTC staff is trying to strengthen the privacy rules that apply to Meta.
In all of these cases, the FTC is taking on powerful corporate monopolies which have raised prices on working people, illegally crushed competitors, and violated the privacy of their customers. But it's not just major tech companies that stand to benefit from the illegal firings of Bedoya and Slaughter. Under Biden, the FTC had cracked down on oil executives who were colluding to raise gas prices.
Now, here's the thing. This is the problem with people who are Democrats. Fayez Shakir was part of the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2020. And he's also a Democrat. So yes, he's going to say, well, this is what Biden did that was good. But Biden also did a lot of the same things that Trump did, especially with approving the Willow Project, which approved more oil drilling within Alaska, which can also contribute to our, environmental degradation. And that was also given a big giveaway to oil executives. So yeah, Biden always cancels out the good he does with other bad. So what's really the difference? That's the only pushback. That's the pushback that I have. Because Biden literally sets things up for Trump to be able to knock the pens down. That's the only thing. But let's continue.
Response, Donald Trump told oil executives that if they raised $1 billion for his campaign, he would, quote, ease the Federal Trade Commission's scrutiny of their industry. Guess what? That's happening. Bedoya was also pursuing large retailers like Walmart, who have spent decades crushing small businesses in the communities they serve. And he's been going after the monopolists who control the soda and alcohol retail industries. Recently, I sat down with Commissioner Bedoya to discuss his work at the FTC fighting to save small independent grocery stores. He was fighting to lower prices by taking on the power of the dominant food companies and grocery chains. This is just one piece of the consumer protection work that will be lost if Donald Trump is successful in taking control over the agency.
Now, another thing, everybody's complaining about the price of eggs. Everybody's complaining about the price of food when you go to the grocery store, right? So much so that one of the candidates for New York City mayor is actually proposing city-owned grocery stores in order to be able to combat the high prices. Now, I don't know about having a city-owned grocery store, but I definitely know that worker co-op stores would actually be a benefit to the community. But at the same time, if you're pushing people this far, then of course, then they're going to want, city-owned grocery stores because, you want a grocery store that doesn't have a for-profit motive. Well, okay. And that's the problem, because of these companies, you have these big ass companies that really just don't care about the workers and they just care about their bottom lines. They want to stay in the black. Let's continue.
Make no mistake, this is the story of exactly why Bedoya was fired. Commissioner Bedoya, thank you for sitting down with us.
Thank you for having me.
So you came into this job here at the FTC. Remind us, when did you start here?
May 2022.
From the moment you began in May 2022, you had a few key priorities in mind. One of those priorities that seemed to stick out to me and many who watched the Federal Trade Commission is the Robinson-Patman Act. What is the Robinson-Patman Act?
Simply put, it is a law that provides a level playing field for small retailers, small grocers against their billionaire competitors. It used to be the most enforced antitrust law at the Federal Trade Commission. And as a result of that enforcement, independent retailers thrived in this country. Then around the 1980s, late 1970s, the Reaganites came in and they wanted unfettered capitalism. They tarred and feathered the law as some protectionist throwback for inefficient small retailers against the cost-cutting efficiencies of the big box stores or the large retailers. And they persuaded upon law enforcement to stop enforcing the law. And what we've seen since then is just a collapse of independent retail in this country. This is not a law about curbing efficiency. It's a law about curbing bullying by powerful market actors that are pressuring their suppliers into giving them deals that no one else can get.
Prior to Trump's inauguration,
Okay. So ultimately, what we can see as those mom and pop shops that we used to go to, those stores that were community owned, that were owned by the people of the community, those things have went away because ultimately the big box stores are now taking over. Big corporations have been taking over. Imagine how many people now have to order from Amazon just to get the same goods that they used to get from other smaller stores. And that's because they've allowed this to get cut. And make no mistake, because you can say, well, yeah, it was Reagan that started it, but, you know, who didn't roll it back? Did Clinton roll it back? Did Obama roll it back? How about Biden? And the thing is like, you keep these things in place, but you say we're still just going to fight a little bit harder against them, but you allow them to stay in place. So that's one of the biggest issues that I have with the Democrats in regards to this, is that they always, if the Republicans push things forward, 6 inches, the Democrats will fight to push it back 1 or 2 inches. And then the Republicans will advance another 6 inches. Then the Democrats will fight back another 2 inches. And then it goes on and on and on. And it keeps advancing until it's ineffective. It doesn't work as well. And a lot of times that, strengthening these regulatory agencies is really just performative, because it really doesn't do anything as strongly as it used to for the protections of not just consumers, but also small business owners. Because quiet as it's kept, the Republican and Democratic parties do not care about small businesses. They don't. They never did. Let's continue.
The FTC last December filed the first lawsuit under the Robinson-Patman Act in decades.
Oh, wait, in decades. In decades. Who was president before Donald Trump? Wasn't it Joe Biden? Then Donald Trump was president before that. Then we have Barack Obama? Right? Then we had George W. Bush. Then before that, we had Clinton, Willie P. So it hasn't been done in decades. Meaning some Democratic presidents dropped the ball, didn't they? But they didn't drop the ball by accident. They dropped the ball on purpose, because they're in line with big business as well. All right, let's continue.
A month later, they filed a second lawsuit against Pepsi for engaging in illegal price discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
For you personally, why is the Robinson-Patman Act something that you care so deeply about?
If you ask anyone, what's the store that matters most to you in town? One thing I've noticed is that it's almost always not a chain. It is almost always an independent. If you live in the city, maybe it's the bodega that holds your keys, where everyone knows your name. It's staffed well at all hours. If you live in the country, maybe it's your community pharmacist who has known your family for decades, who delivers your prescriptions to your door and has done so for a long time. What I have noticed, and I think so many other people have noticed, is that these independent retailers are failing. And so when I started learning about Robinson-Patman and talking to these retailers, they pointed to the law as the non-enforcement of the law as the reason why they were facing this trouble.
Give people a glimpse into how a powerful actor operates. Give us some of those tricks of the trade. If you're running a monopoly right now, you're a big Amazon, Walmart, how are you making this economy rigged for you against small business competitors?
For me, the aha moment was visiting a fourth generation grocer in South Dakota named R.F. Bowie. He serves Indian country. He is in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. We went up to the manager's office, and Mr. Bowie took out a list and he pushed it towards us. And on it were a bunch of staples, eggs, cereal, milk. And next to it was the acquisition price to his wholesaler and the sale price at the nearest big box store 50 miles away. His customers, even though they're some of the poorest people in the country, were paying 30 to 50% more than the people served by the nearest big box store. He said, even when my wholesaler bundles my orders with independents around the country to approach the order sizes of the big boxes, we cannot get those prices.
So this is also very true. So what a lot of times we'll do is like Walmart says, okay, you have so many units of this particular product. Because we're Walmart, then you need to pay us. I'm sorry, you need to charge us only so much, which allows them to be able to put those products at cheaper prices. But the smaller stores don't have that power because they're not these big stores that are all over the country. And so then the suppliers go, well, no, we have to pay more. Because they're also trying to make up that money that they don't get as much from Walmart. So they have to raise the prices on the people that are smaller. And also, small businesses versus these big corporations is also a class issue. So when you think about it that way, gutting the FTC, like what Trump's trying to do, really is going to be part of the class war that the 1% is waging against the 99%.
And so my folks have a choice. They can either pay too much for their groceries and run out of money halfway through the month, or they can pay a whole bunch of other money to get someone to drive them 100 miles round trip to the nearest grocer, to the nearest big box. And I think this is just not fair. This is fundamentally unfair to rural America. The same thing is happening to urban America.
Let's think about them in the independent grocers world.
Yeah.
People trying to make it right now. If I wanted to start an independent grocer in any town in America, what challenges am I dealing with?
You're dealing with the fact that when it comes to grocery, when it comes to retail, too often the best man doesn't win. The richest man wins. The one with the biggest war chest wins. The one with the biggest market size wins, because these grocers are using this power that they have in the market to demand discounts that other people can't get, that aren't justified by the efficiencies or economies of scale of bulk purchasing. I think that's what you're running up against.
Largely where you may have had an independent grocer being able to operate, correct me if I'm wrong, it's now a Safeway, it's a Kroger, it's an Albertsons, it's some other large chain. Fair?
Yes. Let me give you a couple of quick statistics. So around 1980, most grocers in the country were independent. Now, the vast majority are chains. Between the end of Robinson-Patman enforcement in 1981 and 20 years, 30 years later, we lost 100,000 small retailers and independent grocers. The word food desert did not exist. Now it's a synonym for rural and urban America.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, in the area where I used to live, we had two grocery stores, one across the street from the other. We had, we really want to go back. It was one grocery store over there, and it was a Food Lion, right? Y'all remember that? That Food Lion closed down, stayed closed for a while, right? Then they changed the Food Lion into a Save-A-Lot. And that Save-A-Lot existed there for a while. And everybody from that surrounding area would go to that Save-A-Lot in order to purchase their food. Then the Europeans came and built an Aldi right directly across the street from the Save-A-Lot to compete. And so you had two different groups. You had two groups going to either the Save-A-Lot or the Aldi. Then they closed the Save-A-Lot. The Save-A-Lot's not there anymore. So it's just the Aldi. But problem is, there's other areas where there is no grocery store. Or you have to go a further distance because you have to go to the grocery store. Food deserts, meaning places where you can't get adequate healthy food in order to be able to eat, are places where you got a corner store, gas station, but they really don't carry a lot of produce or any at all. They don't carry a lot of healthy whole foods there. So therefore, you're only relegated to going to these, 7-Elevens, Speedways, Wawas, and stuff like that to really get your food. Not even a Wawa, really. You're relegated to giving your food there, but you're eating a whole lot of things that are loaded with salt, fat, and sugar that are processed. And so then, even though you're eating, the nutritional value is low. So that's what we call a food desert, because there's no actual real grocer within the area. Or then if there is a grocer in the area, it is a Walmart. It's either a Walmart or a Publix. We don't really have many Winn-Dixies around anymore. We do have Aldi, Save a Lot, those. And so when it comes down to it, ultimately, depending on where you live, there's not any grocers that are close by. I can tell you this for certain. In the last segment, we were talking about one of the poorest, most unstable zip codes in Central Florida, 32805. Is there a grocery store in that area? I know there's Al's Food Store, but that's like a corner store. I don't think there's actually a grocery store that's really close by. That's within walking distance for people, especially the elderly and disabled, to get to for their food needs. They have to go, a mile down the street to El Presidente? Or if they don't want to go there, then they have to go they have to go, a half a mile to El Presidente, or they have to go like a mile and a half just to get to the Walmart. And can they actually get there? Because you got to jump on 2 different buses just to be able to get there. First, you got to jump on the number 8. Then you got to take the number 8 and then transfer to the number 19. And then you get on the 19, and then hopefully you'll be able to get there to the Washington Shore Superstop in order to be able to walk to the Walmart or near the Washington Shore Superstop to get to that Walmart. And that's what you have. But then that's a whole bunch of time. That's like, 45 minutes to an hour just to get on the bus to go someplace that really only takes about 6 minutes to get to. So yes, there's food deserts. And yes, they still exist. And yes, I'm damn near one. Thankfully, I have a grocery store nearby. But even still, Anywho, let's continue.
And if you look at the graphs you plotted out, it is undeniable that the end of enforcement of Robinson-Patman has hollowed out urban and rural America.
What has been your experience of why people are being charged higher prices in a time when arguably the market is the most efficient it has been? You have big box store retailers, big chains governing most market share in America.
I know from depositions FTC has taken, from trial transcripts from our litigations, that executives look at inflation. And yes, sometimes they have to raise the price of their products because of inflation from their suppliers. But other times they say, this is an opportunity for us to be a price leader and to increase the price of our products. I think we have too little competition. I think you have too concentrated a market. And I think you have a culture in which the grocers that serve their community are too often disconnected from that community.
Donald Trump's firing of Alvarez.
Hang on, let me also say this as well. When they talk about competition, they talk about, from a capitalist perspective, they talk about, competition, that breeds innovation, that breeds lower prices, things like that. When in capitalism, you have, particularly like corporate grocery stores and things like that, they're they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, which means that they have to grow year over year by law. By law, they have to grow year over year in order to be able to maximize profits for the shareholders to have their bigger dividend checks. Because of that, and then that means that as they get bigger, they have to eat the competition. They have to eat and absorb the competition. So some of these stores will absorb, let's say, for instance, Kroger, and let's say you got some mom and pop shop. Well, they either have to take them out and make sure that they close down and they absorb their customers, or they have to buy them out. So then the competition is eliminated. Capitalism thrives on really monopolization happening in order for it to continuously sustain itself. And the problem is that as you have monopolization, then services go down. It's bad for small businesses, and there's less competition, which means that they can actually raise the price as much as they want because there's nobody else to compete with, because they done run out the competition or they ate up all the competition. That's how capitalism works, because it requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. And so then if you look at it that way, then really the capitalist system is really anti-competition, because it's not the best who wins, it's the greediest who wins. It's the one who exploits the most that wins. And so if you have a regulatory agency that's trying to keep them in check, but you start gutting them, or you start weakening them, or when things happen, you look the other way, but you say you're for the FTC, like the Democrats do, but then, you know, they're not really as enforcing the things that they should. Well, then guess what you got on your hands? Then you got people who come in who are conservative, who say, well, the FTC, they're not doing their job enough, so therefore we have to take them out and put actual people who are going to run the FTC correctly. And then he wants to put conservatives in there that are going to look the other way when it comes to big corporations. It's just it's sad. Let's finish up.
Bedoya is part of a pattern. When Trump's major donors raised concerns about government officials attempting to hold them accountable,
we had organizations that were looking into us that were like not really involved with social media, like the CFPB, like this financial. I don't even know what it stands for. It's the financial organization that Elizabeth Warren had set up.
Trump shut.
Okay, so the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, was started and set up so that when it came to companies cheating and scamming consumers, that was supposed to be a government entity that said, you can't scam them. And if you did scam them, it's like, nope, you got to pay that money back to the consumer because you took that from them. You know who is a recipient that I know of from the CFPB? Nick of RBN, comrade. If you recount, he actually talked about how he was actually cheated because he was a black car buyer. They actually cheated him out of $1,000 when it comes to car payments because of him being a black man. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau actually saw it and they were like, hey, that's not right. So it's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau went to the car company or went to the bank that discriminated against him because he was black by charging him more. And they said, hey, give us that money. And then they go, hey, Nick, here's a check. Because you shouldn't have got cheated. They actually played referee. And the fact that they played referee is that they don't like. Now, here's the thing. Should the CFPB have been stronger? Yes. I personally think it should have been stronger. I don't think it was strong enough. And this is the problem that I have with the Democrats, because they never make these regulatory agencies strong enough against these corporate dictators. But at the same time, now you have people like a billionaire talking about, I don't even know what the CFPB stands for. It's like, dude, you're Mark Zuckerberg. You can't pull up your phone and Google what it means. Anyway, they're stealing the data of their users, and the CFPB is like, you can't do that. And they're getting mad about stealing data. And yet they want to complain about TikTok, and then they want to ban TikTok because the Chinese Communist Party is stealing your data. Meanwhile, Meta is doing it all the live long day. Does that make any sense? Is that fair? So, and we wouldn't have to worry about it as much if we didn't have these corporate dictators that were running our government, cheating and price gouging consumers day in and day out because they want to give more money to their shareholders. This is why we need a worker-centered economy where workers actually own the means of production. But this is why, regulatory agencies like this exist. Sometimes regulatory agencies can be a good thing because it can prevent us from being sick, or it can prevent us from our cars blowing up, or it can prevent us from drinking raw sewage. I talked about that part 2 weeks ago. Let's finish.
Shuts them down.
We virtually shut down the out of control CFPB, escorting radical left bureaucrats out of the building and locking the doors behind them.
Radical left BS. Let me tell you something right now. If you guys want to see a real radical left person, then you're watching RBN. That's radical left. The CFPB is center right at best, just saying that you can't cheat people. And for some people, for some reason, Donald Trump thinks that's radical left. Donald Trump wouldn't know left if he turned left. If he danced to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left, he wouldn't even know. See, this is the problem. A lot of times, and this is what grinds my gears too. Thankfully, we don't have a meeting today, so even though I'm overtime. But I wanted to say this. You know what grinds my gears about people, conservatives like Donald Trump, is that they think that liberals are the left, when in reality, liberals are just center right. They don't even know what the actual definition of socialism and communism is. They will call somebody like Nancy Pelosi a Marxist, a socialist. Dictionary, you guys can just look that up online. You guys can actually look it up, like what it actually is. But when the government does stuff, it's socialism? Come on. But Donald Trump knows, I think, what it is. It's just he doesn't want you to know what it is. Because if you actually know what it is, then you start to go, that starts to make more sense. Jesus Christ. Comb over is blowing minds right now.
But partisan politics has little to do with the corruption unfolding in the Trump administration. Trump is now waging a war on behalf of lawbreakers in corporate America.
This isn't about Democrat or Republican. It's about who has power and who doesn't, and who wants the law enforced and who wants it ignored by prosecutors.
Here's the problem, though. When it comes to getting money out of politics, the Democratic Party actually has done fuck all to really get money out of politics because they thrive with money in politics. So this is also on the blame also falls on the Democratic Party. The problem is that unfortunately somebody like Faz Shakir won't tell you that. Or he'll, bury it within the lead and say, oh my God, Trump is doing this. And I'm like, well, the Democrats actually helped set it up for Trump to knock those pens down. And so this is why all workers need to run and own the government and these companies. Because then if it's in the hands of workers, That means that they are running things and they're also the workers. And then the money also stays within the community, which means that it also builds out the community. Oh, man. So, that's what, somebody like, that's what somebody like Trump, excuse me, is doing. He fires both commissioners at the FTC. And so the FTC, the purpose of it is the FTC enforces consumer protection and antitrust laws and has bipartisan structure where no more than 3 to 5 commissioners can come from the same party. Both Bedoya and Slaughter plan to sue reverse the firings. This is corruption, plain and simple. Slaughter said in the statement, the president illegally fired me from my position as a federal trade commissioner, violating the plain language of the statute and clear Supreme Court precedent. FCC Chairman Edgar Ferguson, a Republican appointee to the commission last year by then President Joe Biden and named chairman by Trump, said on Tuesday he had no doubts about Trump's constitutional authority to remove commissioners, which is necessary to ensure democratic accountability for our government. So this basically is an article that actually talks about what happens, And so it also says the agency is gearing up for trials in a case against Meta and 2 against Amazon. Is also enforcing privacy-related settlements with Meta and X. Here's the thing. Remember what I said, how the government is ran by corporations? So if your privacy is being invaded, who is really trying to invade your privacy? It's the corporations. If somebody's driving a car, right, and they're trying to run somebody over, is it the car that's trying to run somebody over, or is it the driver? Government's the car. The corporations are the driver. Who's trying to drive that person over? It's the corporations. Who's trying to invade your privacy? The corporations. This is why they want all your data. See? This is why I said that the corporations need to be the steering wheel needs to be wrestled out of the hands of the corporations and put workers in the driver's seat. Corporations, tie them up and put them in the trunk. I said what I said. But the problem is that a lot of times people say, well, you want the government to do this? And I'm like, under worker control? Hell yeah. Under worker control. But the thing is that a lot of times people, particularly conservatives and a lot of libertarians, will think that government is the bad guy, when in reality, it's like, if I get ran over by the car, it's not the car that's the problem, it's the driver that's the problem. Switch the driver. And maybe, just maybe, the car will drive a little bit safer. Because the driver will be somebody that's actually responsible, that actually cares about people. The government is ran by corporate power. So, of course, the FTC is going to get gutted. Of course, the CFPB is going to get gutted. And they have their guy in the White House. But guess what? They also had their guy in the White House just a few months ago. His name is Joseph Robinette Biden. And they were going to get their girl in the White House named Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, sorry. But it's the same thing. They just got different drivers wearing blue and red uniforms. So when it comes to people like Donald Trump, of course he's going to do this, and of course this is going to hurt, harm, and put small businesses in danger. Because he just doesn't care. I don't care if you voted for Trump and you own a small business. He doesn't care about you. Because when it comes to competing with the big box stores, he's going to side with the big box stores. Because who's donating to his coffers? so you can side with them. So this is why we talk about leaving both parties. This is why we talk about running away from the duopoly. And this is why we talk about building up dual power, because the thing is that this is systemic. This cannot be sustained. So I remember Roger Meadows saying that, because I don't have a meeting, I think I'm in the clear. So we'll do this really quick. I'm not going to share this entire video because you said it's 20 minutes, but we can go over it just a little bit. Okay. Let's go over this because I have not seen this yet. So let's just see what this is.
Trump's FTC chair put out a major new announcement that he was going to keep in place the merger guidelines that had controversially been put into place originally by Biden's FTC chair, Lina Khan. And you put this first element up on the screen. This is Andrew Ferguson saying, look, today I informed the FTC staff that the 23 merger guidelines are in effect and will serve as the framework for our agency's merger review analysis. These guidelines build on previous guidelines and many decades of case law. That stability is important for enforcement agencies and the business community. You can roll the rest of that so people can read it and pause it and read it if they're watching. But I wanted
to... the headline here from Counterpoint says Trump FTC chair backs Lina Khan policy. So this is positive news, definitely. This is interesting. Okay, I see what you're doing, Roger. I see why you wanted me to wait. Okay, let's just listen to a few more minutes and then
we'll get a reaction from Doha Meki, who served as the Biden administration's chief in the antitrust division towards the end, and as the deputy chief in the antitrust division through, I guess, most of his tenure.
Yeah.
Right. And have you've been working with Lina Khan for a long time towards this day, towards this idea that there would be a new bipartisan consensus around antitrust and how the government ought to approach mergers. So
hang on. So just for people who may not know what antitrust is, antitrust basically means when corporations start to get too big, they start to monopolize too much. Antitrust laws are there to break the companies up so that they don't get too big, so that they end up, drowning out the rest of the competition. So that's the point of antitrust. One of the people who enforced antitrust very heavily back in the day was Theodore Roosevelt, President Roosevelt. They actually called him the trust buster. And so a lot of these consumer protections were really started under a Republican president, by the way. I think, wasn't Theodore Roosevelt Republican? Yeah, he's a Republican. And he was also a conservationist, by the way. Not conservative, conservationist. See? Because they wanted to conserve the environment. But anyways, so it was really to preserve the ability for companies to be able to compete. So it's basically like a referee saying, hey, you're getting too big. Nope. But both parties have sat on their hands and allowed these companies to get bigger and bigger and bigger. People like Bill Clinton, who signed the, what was it called? The Telecommunications Act of 1996, which deregulated telecommunications, which allowed companies to start doing mergers and acquisitions and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So then we had less telecommunications companies to actually compete on the nation's stage. People like that have actually made it so that it is harder to push antitrust law. So you have Democrats and Republicans that have done that. And so now they're like, oh, well, we got to start doing antitrust law after you guys let it get so big that it's hard to fight against. And so, look, Walmart should not be as big as it is. Amazon should not be as big as it is, right? Disney should not be as big as it is. Let me ask you this. Why does YouTube have the monopoly on long-form video content creation? I'm just going to put it out there. YouTube is a monopoly. Why isn't that broken up? Right? Competition breeds innovation, right? But why aren't you guys breaking it up? Why aren't you guys helping to keep competition there? Oh, I get it. Because you guys really don't care about that. Because he who has the gold makes the rules, right? Right. Okay, I got you. So this is the point, right? Let's continue on. So that's what basically antitrust is. Just wanted to give you guys that overview so that you know exactly what they're talking about.
Oh, first of all, were you surprised that Ferguson said, okay, you know what? We're sticking with what Lena Khan outlined. And then tell us why it matters.
Sure. So this was not hugely surprising for those of us who have worked in and around the antitrust agencies for a long time.
Once Ferguson became chair, it was a signal that
I think it was a great, so let me just back up and say, you know, I worked in the antitrust division of the DOJ under Barack Obama as a career public servant. And I actually worked for Donald Trump's first head of the antitrust division, a guy named Nathan Delrahim, and then had a great honor to serve as principal deputy to Jonathan Cantor, and then ultimately lead the antitrust division myself at the end of the Biden administration. And so I have seen for a very long time this bipartisan role towards an antitrust consensus that really prizes going back to first principles. And I think that Donald Trump has made a really important down payment in designating Andrew Ferguson chair of the FTC and nominating a woman named Gail Slater to lead the antitrust division of the DOJ. And what I know of both of them is that they are fiercely conservative. They have a deep fidelity to law. And that means going back to statutes, right? The text of statutes, going back to Supreme Court and appellate precedent. And that's good news for the American people. When we drafted the merger guidelines, which is a process that started in 2022, we undertook a deep review of all of the Supreme Court and appellate cases that had ever been decided on merger antitrust challenges and attempted to write out a document that gave transparency to the business community about how it was that we were going to undertake merger analysis. And for the first time ever since 1968, those guidelines actually cited case law. And so on that telling,
what they
it's
cite
not
before,
surprising.
just like
Vibes.
just vibes, basically, from the University of Chicago or something.
There was no citation to case law, even though other guidance documents, such as the now withdrawn 2000 competitor collaboration guidelines, cited law. The merger guidelines never did. And so this is a deeply conservative principle that there's no antitrust exception to statutory interpretation or judicial precedent in antitrust. And so again, this is not hugely surprising. And I won't necessarily agree with every decision that the new administration makes, but I think this is a really important one and a good one.
Well,
this is interesting because I don't think, and this is just me and my personal opinion, but I feel like the antitrust laws are underused within this country. Remember what we went through in 2008 during the 2008 crisis, where you had these banks that were too big to fail? We shouldn't have banks that are too big to fail. We shouldn't have companies that are too big to fail. I think that the antitrust laws are being underutilized. And the fact remains is that it's almost like they're having a more hands-off approach and just letting the markets within capitalism go as where they may. But because of that, the nature of capitalism is mergers and acquisitions are the name of the game, because you got to merge and acquire these other companies in order to grow, because you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders in order to be able to grow their dividend checks. And so then, of course, you're going to be like, is that going to help make it so they violate that? My thing is like, if it does, then it does, right? Competition, if you guys really want competition there, then you guys break up the rest of these companies. You guys break up Google. Let's do that, right? Break up PayPal. Break up these companies that are gotten too big. Because the problem is that break up Twitter. I don't care. Because the problem is that now you have these people who are so rich, so wealthy, that they literally can buy governments, which is the most dangerous thing. I think mergers and acquisitions, part of the FTC, managing that should be one of the first lines of defense against companies getting too large. But the problem is that they allow these companies to get large because, well, political contributions. Because of the system that deems it that way. But anyways, that's as far as I'm going to play. Sorry, Roger, I can't play more because due to the sake of time. But that is interesting. I will share that video, and then also the other subsequent video as well in the chat. There was another video that I really wanted to go over that was talking about these companies that are closing down. And they basically said that we're about due for another 2008 crisis. It's going to be something that's at that level. Ladies talking about it. I'll put the link to her video in the description. This is actually on Twitter. And the title says the next 2 days, 2008 is happening now. Party City, Joanne with Joanne's Fabric, Forever 21, Big Lots, all collapsing. But this isn't just retail struggling, it's financial arson. Private equity rigged the system. They built a time bomb and now it's detonating. And it's basically a mega thread, but you actually can watch the video. The video is about a little over 8 minutes. I don't really have the time to listen to it. To do it here. I listened to the entire video beforehand, but of course I'm long-winded as hell and I ran way over time. But if you guys would like to, you guys can actually look at that video. I think it's actually really good for you guys to do so if you guys have not already. But yes, I think it's absolutely important that we actually have a system that works for the workers first and then lets everything else fall into place. But that means agents like Donald Trump, like the billionaires, like the Democratic Party and Republican parties, really the billionaires, their lackeys, the corporate dictators and all them. The system has to be wrestled out of their hands. And it takes us to do it. So if you care about small businesses, especially about the businesses that are worker-owned, which we're trying to push for, like worker-owned co-ops. Because if we actually had an FTC that actually broke up the companies at a higher rate, imagine how many small businesses that would thrive, especially ones that are worker co-ops. Think about it. Worker-owned co-ops would actually be bigger because then we wouldn't have to compete against the big box stores. I think we got to talk about that. But anyways, with that being said, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. Let's go into the comments in the chat. I'm going to check to see if we have any Rumble rants first, and then we'll go into the Rockfin. And then out of the Rockfin, then we will go to the YouTube chat. For some reason, it is not showing any chats on Rockfin, even though there's like 30 people watching. Okay. It probably moved forward anyway. So let's go to the Rockfin chat. And if you sent a Rumble rant, just comment that you did, because you may have sent it already, and I may have missed it, and I do apologize. That's my sorry for 2004, and I ain't mess up no. Okay. See, but I guess what the title of the video is, and Ryan speaking for 1 to 5 minutes before guest starts talking is most important. Of course, he said cooperatives of self-regulatory and government is costing, and believe it or not, more efficient. Blasphemy, as a libertarian conservative says to me. How is that? When our government just in New York City, his family, I tell you how. I'm sorry, New York State. His family, I'll tell you how. It's these public-private partnerships where the corporate side leases the government for more and more money, giving bad results than what the government can do the same job for less. I should have proofread before sending cooperatives or regulatory and government costs us less is more efficient. Believe it or not, when the New York State government is less efficient. Reason? Corporate fleeces. Also, by the way, I just want to say this. When it comes to also breaking up companies, we either can do one of two things. We either can break up all of the military contractors, or we can just, have the government just acquire them and make them into government-owned companies where there's no profit incentive at all. I'm actually in favor of the latter, because I think that especially when it comes to our defense contractors and things like that, which I talked about last week, I don't think defense contractors should be any independent company, should be any private company. I think it all should be owned under the federal government. And then on top of that, all that money that they're charging the federal government doesn't get charged because you don't have to pay for profit, for the profit margins of these billionaires and the people at the top. Therefore, it is actually going to be cheaper for the government to actually make all these things in-house. So when it comes to our Apache helicopters and our F-15s and our F-35s and our Humvees and all these other different things, if we actually built these things in-house, it actually will be cheaper for us. So then we wouldn't be spending over $800 billion in discretionary spending each and every single year for our Defense Department. Which means all that money that we're actually spending can actually start going back to the American people instead of going to these rich people who run companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics. Well, what do I know? I'm just a silly communist. Anyways, let's continue. All right. Roger continues, says, government costing us more while delivering bad results. Where government do the same job for less, delivering better results? The proof? North Dakota has a public bank, and Nebraska? Is that Nebraska? Has state power since 1931. 99.999% uptime, Chattanooga. Municipal broadband best in the country. I think that's from the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. Which one of you people living in citizen ballot initiative states are going to put forth an initiative, preferably amendment for single-payer health care? On the 2026 gubernatorial ballot, for some of y'all, You won't need to craft the new one. You already got a single payer bill still gathering dust in the health committee that refused to move. Use that. If you can't hit the monopolies at the top, then hit them from the foundation in the states. This is how you do it. 1, New York State has the DFS, the Department of Financial Services, is the CFPB at state level. See if your state has an equivalent. If not, create one using a citizen ballot initiative amendment. Number 2, the 2015 Model Corporate Charter Revocation Act, federal law enforced by state attorney generals. That revokes the state corporate charter for those companies to act the most egregious way, putting at risk workers by violating the Occupational Safety and Health Administration rules, the environment by violating the Environmental Protection Agency regulations. You should have also state version of the EPA. Also, by the way, and puts communities at risk. Corporate charters are privileges, not rights. Okay, I rock with this. Corporate charters are privileges, not rights. Meaning, if you're a corporation that puts consumers at risk, and if you have done it a handful of times, that means your corporate charter should be revoked and it should be offered to the workers first to be able to buy up the company and operate as a worker cooperative. No. You put us at risk? No. It's out of the hands of the shareholders. Nope. Your CEO, fired. Your CFO, fired. Your COO, fired. No. And then put it in the hands of the workers. Because the workers will be able to do something with it that won't harm the people within the area, that won't harm the consumers. I thank you very much for this, Roger, because I absolutely agree with this. Because corporate charters are privileges, not rights. All right. People are going to look at me crazy when they hear me say that, but it is what it is. Roger Mail says, which can be taken away. Absolutely. Number 3, pass right of first offer laws that should allow attorney generals to enforce corporate charter revocation. Then state government issues a cooperative charter in its place so that workers don't go unemployed. Now they own. 4, have state government put millions and billions of dollars of government investment into building out the cooperative economy to pilfer employees of shareholder-owned corporations. One way would be to establish a state government agency that, together with the public bank, could handle and facilitate this. If you plan to unionize and the boss shuts down that location, this government agency can help to come and help the workers who are now unemployed convert into a working cooperative or whatever type of cooperative. This is more than one way to skin a cat. The right believes in states' rights and pushing everything to the states. That's why they screw up the federal government. People, this is trust busting. Unconventionally. Let's beat them at their own game. The end. You're right, antitrust laws were underutilized until Biden, believe it or not, that was the only good thing. It was major good, but the only good about his administration was Lena Khan. I didn't go far enough, but it went further than any administration since before the 1980s. What also causes monopolies is when you raise the minimum wage too high for small businesses to be able to keep up with. They go out of with that, and they go out of business, and then their big corporate competitors eats them. That's why you provide a tax subsidy for small to mid-level mom and pop shop businesses, startup worker co-op franchises to cover 85 to 100% of labor costs, then peg it to fair market rent. Niece has a small business in Virginia, and I told her what the minimum wage should be for Virginia, and she said she got a business. I proposed that. She said she can rock with that. Okay. Thank you very much for all that, Roger. But yeah. And the thing is that's the problem. I mean, you guys can cover this stuff from the state and start revoking corporate charters. And it's like, well, no, you guys can't operate in this state if you guys are actually harming the workers. If you're harming the workers, if you're harming the consumers, then yeah, no, corporate charter it was revoked. And then the right of first offer actually goes to the workers, and then they get to say if they do want to own the company collectively and operate it democratically. And if they want to, hey, here's yours. And people go, well, how are they going to have the money to buy it? Well, then that's when the government goes, okay, we're going to give you guys a loan. So then you guys get a loan from the government to be able to buy that business outright collectively. And then you guys pay us back at a very low interest loan rate. And so then they have the capital, they have the money to actually buy the business. And now they own it collectively. And now they have a low interest rate to pay the government back. And also, me being the commie that I am, even though they are paying back the government, I will also create a tax subsidy or a tax break for worker cooperatives so that they don't have to pay the taxes. So that means that's extra money that they can still make sure to pay us back for the loan, but they don't have to pay us taxes for a certain period of time because they're a worker cooperative, because they're actually literally keeping money within their own communities, which means that money still circulates, which grows the community. Oh, yes, this is a great idea. Yeah. Roger. Yeah. Anyway, let's go to the rest of the chat. Chima says the people who love to say government bad are the same ones who will side with the police when they do horrible things to communities of color. Yup. And then people wonder, like, why is poverty so high? Why is the crime rate so high? Well, because you allow the poverty to rise. And people commit crimes of opportunity and crimes of desperation in order to be able to survive in a system that thrives on poverty. And the poverty in homelessness is the way it is in this system because it pushes people who are workers to accept exploitation. Otherwise, they end up being the examples. They end up being the examples like the people who are out in the street. So you accept your exploitation. But then the people who will grow extremely desperate, guess what they're going to do? They're going to commit crimes of opportunity and crimes of desperation in order to be able to make it. Especially now that rent prices are getting too high, food prices are getting too high, your electric bill is way too high now. It takes a whole bunch of money to put gas in your tank. So yeah. Let's continue in here. Wait, is that okay? Make sure I go here. Max says if it all goes private though, perhaps that would be good. Then people can just pull out. What are you talking about? Private? Are you talking about Social Security, or are you talking about please let me know what you're talking about. Rich says Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez are reportedly planning a lavish $500 million wedding on his yacht Kourou in Italy this spring or this summer. And the funny part is that money is not coming back to workers here in the United States. That money is going over there to Italy. That money is going to be for those people that work on the yacht. Is that money going to Amazon workers? Hell no. You know? Ricky says, during Standing Rock, I wrote to Obama. He responded by saying the infrastructure is in place and will be going through. Chuck says, you never shop at a co-op grocery store. They're way too expensive. Unfortunately, remember what I was talking about, how the big corporations, they actually are able to go to suppliers and go, hey, we demand that we pay this, much less. So then it's actually cheaper. Well, that's part of the reason why that sometimes it is a little bit more expensive to shop at co-op grocery stores. Part of the reason why is because the suppliers actually end up making it more expensive for these co-op stores to be able to afford, the products to be able to sell. So that's one of the biggest issues, right? So, if you can support a co-op, then I recommend that you can. But at the same time, we have to survive, right? But those of you who are a little bit more comfortable, could you support them so that they can grow? Can you support them so that they can start making, demands of the supplier and say, hey, we got a little bit bigger, here's what we have. Can you guys start giving us a better rate? Now, it were up to me, companies like, Walmart, Albertsons, Kroger, Safeway, and all these, they will actually be broken up even more. So therefore, they can't demand the same type of price from their suppliers, which means that the suppliers will actually either suppliers start charging them more or they start charging you guys less. But we need the workers to be able to own instead. Yes, thank you so very much, Soya. I appreciate it. I saw in the text message. Sebastian says, I left the Democratic Party and will not rejoin. Don't let them talk you into going back into a party that really doesn't care about you, doesn't really care about human rights. They say they do, but it's like a parent that it's like a two-parent household, and one of the parents knows that you're being abused, but they don't do anything about it. Or sometimes they'll create conditions for you to be further abused. That's the Democratic Party. So really, they're an accomplice. They're a co-conspirator. And therefore, you don't need that type of negativity in your life. Let me go. Badhista Tava. Sorry, I butchered your name. It said it's price collusion. Your local store pays more than Walmart for Coke because Coke says so. Volume is irrelevant. It's corruption. That's another point. Because these big box stores, these big companies, because these companies are making record profits, right? Whether it's Kraft, whether it's Dannon, whether it's Coke, whether it's PepsiCo, whether any one of these stores, they are actually making, record profits. But then in order to keep their products within these big box stores, they'll charge them way less. But at the same time, when it comes to these small mom and pop shops, they will charge them way more just to be able to have in their stores. It's the same idea as wealthy and rich people will get free stuff more than workers and poor people do. People will be willing to give free stuff to people who actually can afford it, who more than can afford it. But that's how they operate. And that's the part that kills me. Right? It's stupid. Oh, snap. I got to go. I'm supposed to be meeting up with somebody in 15 minutes. Oh, my gosh. Hang on. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so it looks like that plan has been canceled. But yeah, so as far as the prices go, these companies they set the tone, but they could actually make it cheaper for the mom and pop shops, and then they can raise the prices on Walmart. Because is Walmart going to really just say you can't sell Coke products in a Walmart anymore? Are they really going to do that? Is Unilever going to say, well, you can't sell products in our store? You can't sell the products in our store anymore? Honestly, if these big box stores wanted to, they can actually raise the prices on those, and they can lower the prices on the smaller stores. But they won't do it. Good to see you, John Kemper. Okay. All right, so I have to get going anyway because I need to get out of here. But let me do. Nita Kant says, I said we already paid for it with all the rent we have been paying for 40 years or less. Desperately seeking real news says, funny thing, small businesses were decimated the last time Tramp had power. We call him Tramp. My goodness. Well, that's interesting. But I'm going to head on out because I got to get going. I got to eat. And I wanted to share this really quick. Because when it comes to the way this system is, when it comes to the way this system operates, this is very unsustainable. I was telling this to a couple comrades yesterday. So when I went to the hospital a few weeks ago, my mom ended up having to call 911 for them to come and pick me up and take me to the hospital. So the Orlando Fire Department came to pick me up, right? It wasn't rural metro. It wasn't the regular ambulance services. It was the fire department. I got a bill from the Orlando Fire Department. I can't show because all the people know my address. But the Orlando Fire Department, the charge for emergency, the charge is $978. Then thankfully, Medicare paid into it. All right. Mileage. $13.05 per mile. I only went 2 miles. $13.05 per mile, and I only went 2 miles. Y'all charging $13.05? Anyway, so adjusted. Thankfully, I now owe the Orlando Fire Department $107.43. Now, here's my question. I thought that the fire department was supposed to be free at the point of service for citizens. And yet, the fire department, which transported me to the hospital, are charging me over $100. Well, they charge over $900, but thankfully Medicare took care of some of that. But it charged me over $100. This system is unsustainable. It's very unsustainable. Nina Kant said, missed my $10 Rumble rant. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me check. Let me check on Rumble. I hope I didn't. Hang on. I'm checking. Oh, I see it. Okay. Thank you very much for letting me know, because I don't like missing out on stuff like this. I know what it's like to be spending your hard-earned money, and then next thing you know, it gets missed out. I don't like that. Let's look at here. Thank you very much for the Rumble rant, Nina Kant. Nina Kant says, I recently read Harry S. Truman's 1950 message to Congress. When corporate taxes and wealthy paid 91% in taxes. Kind of long, but interesting. Yeah. And back in the day, it was that much. But why did it go that much? Well, you think about it, during the 1930s and 40s, during the Great Depression, we had to raise the taxes on the corporations because, number one, we had a 25% unemployment rate here in the United States during the Great Depression, number one. Number two, workers were, pissed off. You're going to tax them more? No. Who are the people that got the money? The corporations. So what do? You tax them. And so then this allowed for so many different booms to our economy. This allowed for so many social welfare programs for us to take place. This is like how we establish Social Security and disability. So Social Security, and this is how we establish, FHA loans, federal housing grants. This is how we, did the all these different things, right? Because the taxes, are coming from the rich. So it's actually lowering, their money, but it's also allowing us to be able to raise the rates of the workers. So it's not that big of a gulf between, how much the top 1% make versus the bottom 99%. And so, if we try to go back to that, people call us crazy, but I'm like, if you want to make America great again, there you go. Start charging corporate tax rate much higher, and then make it so there's no loopholes. But they don't ever want to do that. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I don't think there's any more Rumble rants. I don't think so. Okay. But thank you very much for letting me know. All right. So I think we're good for the most part. I'm just trying to make sure. Okay. All right, everybody, let me get out of here because I've been going on way too long. And, you guys have been very patient with me. But one of the things that I want to say also is be sure to tune in this Thursday. Real Orlando is going to be joining us. They are a mutual aid group that is doing great work on the ground here in Orlando. And we want to have a discussion with them. Plus, they're in pursuit of some bigger, better things for the work that they're doing. So I can't wait to have them on. And so they'll be joining me, Nick, Sabby, and Rome, which will be a wonderful conversation. You guys are going to want to hear that. This Tuesday, I think it is confirmed that I know I was supposed to have them on a couple of weeks ago, but, scheduling conflicts and things like that. But Jordan Sheridan will be joining me on my channel this Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to tune in for that, so I can continue, talking about what we need to talk about. Also, just to let you guys know, yesterday I went to a pro-Palestine rally because, of course, the genocide. Donald Trump basically greenlit the genocide to continue again, and over 400 people in Gaza have been murdered. It was actually the deadliest week for children ever. Over 200 kids were murdered last week in Palestine. And so, of course, I went there. Shout out to the Florida Palestine Network. Shout out to the Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP. Shout out to all of them for doing all the work that they did. And so this really is something that a lot of people need to talk about more. It's about what's been going on in Palestine. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that it was a great turnout. And really, to be honest with you, when it comes to liberation, we have to focus on all oppressed groups, right? Palestinians, of course, focus on them, focus on what the Black Americans in this country are going through, focus on what Black people around in the diaspora are going through, focus on what people in South America and Latin America are going through, focus on what immigrants are going through, focus on what LGBTQ people and disabled people are going through within this country. Focus on, anti-war, focus on the issues that, involve the Native American community. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can have solidarity with different groups. And really all these groups have problems that are deeply connected to the system that we have. So we don't have to just focus just on one. Now, if you feel like you can only focus on one, fine. But at the same time, don't turn your back on other groups. Don't do that. Because the problem is that once you start to turn your back on them or not stand in solidarity with them, then you're kind of hamstringing what we could be doing to truly liberate all, right? So, of course, I try to focus, and give attention to as much as I possibly can. And the ones that I can't give as much attention to, I stand in solidarity with. Okay. So, with that being said, I'm going to head on out. Thank you so very much. And like I said on my show the other day, is that if you have donated through Spot Fund to help me get to Seattle, of course, I was in the hospital. I could not get to Seattle because I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks. If you donated, but you want your money back and you were not anonymous, because anonymous is going to be extremely hard for me to be able to prove like it's actually you. But if you have, then you can email me. You guys can just go to any video that I have as of late, and all my videos have my email address in there, and you guys can just look it up and go, hey, Jaybe, I actually donated this much. It's like, I want you to, you tell me what you donated and then tell me the amount, and I'll cross-reference, and then, I can give it back either through PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or what's the other one? PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or Zelle. So just let me know, because I want to make sure that if you did, want that money back, because I didn't get to go and do what I said I was going to do. If you guys still want that money back, then I'll be ready to try to give you that money back. It's gonna take some time, to be honest with you, because I'm a broke dude. So even though I didn't spend it really, it's gonna take some time. So, but I still want to make sure you guys get paid back if you would like to get it back. Unfortunately, I can't give it back to Spot Fund to disseminate back to you guys. But anyway. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yes, Miriam, Sabby is on in half an hour. So be sure to tune in to whatever she's got going on. I'm sure it's going to be good. So thank you very much to everybody. And thank you to all the patrons for Patreon. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for all the well wishes too. I appreciate it. So water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things that you got, right? And continuously always fight for the little guy. Fight for your neighbors, fight for your fellow workers. And try to laugh today. It's Sunday, chill, try to laugh today. And just lift your spirits. All right? I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody. Oh, forehead kisses, because that's what I always do. Y'all know me.